And a pleasant good afternoon to everyone out there in fightingirishbreakdown.com land, family, people. Yes, it is Friday. It is Mailbag Free-for-All Friday. And I could not be more excited because this is by far, and I've said it a million times, my favorite day of the week. And let me tell you, it's particularly good this week because it's getting me out of watching the garage sale. So 2 thumbs up to the free-for-all mailbag this week. Brian, how are you doing today, sir?
I'm doing great. Ready to talk some ball, man.
Yeah, man. So we had some breaking news earlier today, I do believe, right? At least since we've been on.
Yeah, I mean, it's not necessarily breaking news, but it was first reported by Tim Priester at 247 Sports, and then we've been able to confirm that Notre Dame is going to land Cain Madden, the offensive line grad transfer from Marshall.
Okay.
So, yeah, that is it's not technically news yet because the kid hasn't gone public with it, but, you know, the bat signals are all out and all that kind of stuff.
Signals.
And from what I understand, that's what it is about. So, yeah, but yes, I mean, let's just dive right into that, Vince.
Yeah,
I mean, because that's where a lot of the questions are. And before the show even started, Mark Krzmanich had a super chat, which I really, really appreciate. You know, happy Friday, Brian. I love the show and all that you and your team do to make a quality product, and we appreciate that very, very much.
No doubt.
Do you see Cain and Rocco timeshare at right guard? I hope so. So, look, I'll just kind of say here's what I'm being told. Okay,
Mark, right into it. Good.
Yeah, I mean, this is a great place to start, and that's where a lot of the questions are. So, first of all, if you haven't seen this kid play and all you've done is look at the All-Americans or whatever, there's links to 3 full game films of just the offensive line for Marshall this past season. So check those out and come to your own conclusions. And that doesn't mean, hey, watch those and you're going to agree with me. You may not. You may watch them and come to a different conclusion, and that's cool. That's what this place is all about. This is not a place where if you don't agree with me, you're not welcome here. I'm gonna debate with you and all that kind of stuff, which I think is fun.
Yeah.
But we certainly like difference of opinions as long as you're open-minded and willing to actually do your own homework before you disagree. I've had people say, "Oh, you're wrong about this kid." Well, have you watched this film? No, I don't watch film. Oh, well, then how do you know I'm wrong?
I may be wrong. Yeah, how do you form an opinion?
I may be wrong, but how do you know that I'm wrong?
Absolutely.
So anyway, so here's what I'm told is he has not been promised starting playing time, but at the same time, this kid was looking for a starting job. He is not leaving Marshall and not. Exactly.
Why wouldn't he? Yeah.
He's not turning down Florida State to be a 6-year grad transfer without the expectation of starting. So my understanding is he's going to get every opportunity to start. My hope is, however, is that Notre Dame is true in that they are not going to just give him a starting job and then he has to earn it. That's my hope.
Yeah.
If he does earn the starting job, I hope that it is a situation with him and Rocco Spindler that I was hoping that it would be with him and Andrew Kristofic.
Right.
Which is a rotation, a sort of like we saw in 2017 with Robert Hainsey and Tommy Kramer. Yeah. Now, here's where I think it gets a little bit interesting. I do think this shakes up the offensive line a little bit because Cain Madden's been a starter at right guard. The plan for Notre Dame at the end of spring was to have the 2 freshmen starting at left guard and then Jarrett Patterson at right guard and Josh Lugg at right tackle.
Right.
At the very least, this is going to flip the 2 guards.
Do you think the new kid is guaranteed to be the right side just because that's where he's always been?
I think it would be foolish to take a kid who's played right guard as long as he's played right guard and move him to the left side when Jarrett Patterson's never played either guard spot.
Yeah, he can go wherever. Yeah.
So, you know, he didn't play this spring. So it would make more sense to move him over to left guard. And that's what I would do. And then Andrew Kristofic hopefully is in that battle as well, and Quinn Carroll, and that's a whole different ramification for those guys. The other thing that was brought up to me by a friend today, and he called me and he shared his opinion of this kid's film, which was even less glowing than my opinion of Cain's film. And we'll get into what I think of Cain Madden here in a minute. But he wonders if maybe this is a situation where Kristofic and Rocco are still battling at guard, but this might have an impact on keeping Jarrett Patterson at center. And then what does that do for Zeke Correll? So I don't know about that. That was his premise, but it did make for an interesting premise because it's, if it's about getting the best 5, who do they view as the best 5? Because that's been a little puzzling for me this entire time. So that is how I think it shakes up the depth chart, Vince. And then I'm going to share my opinion of Cain Madden as a player you share yours, and then we'll dive into the questions. So here's what I see from Cain Madden. I see a guy that is short. I see a guy that doesn't have a great body. He is kind of round. Hold on one second, Vince.
Are you gonna pull it up?
No, I'm not.
Okay. Oh, okay.
There is a he's very strong, very powerful. When I say phone booth with Cain Madden, he is a phone booth player, right? He is that guy that if you're going head to head with him, he's going to be able to handle himself pretty well. The problem is he's got very heavy feet. He plays high, which is surprising. So he's listed as 6'3". He doesn't look 6'3".
There's no chance that kid is 6'3".
He looks about 6'1".
Based on the film.
Yeah, and this is an observation you made to me yesterday, Vince, is he plays high, which you wouldn't expect a 6'1" player to play that high.
Right.
I think that's going to hurt him as there's an up in competition. And the fact is he played against an entirely Conference USA oriented schedule this year, which I think is the worst conference in Division I football. But powerful. He's very powerful, very strong arms. He's just short and not long. And that's a concern for me.
Well, yeah, I agree.
He is an inside zone power blocking guy. He is not good getting into the second level. You are not going to be running outside zone effectively with him. It's just not going to happen. He's just not that kind. He's very heavy-footed. Now, that heavy-footedness, which I love inventing words on this show, that heavy-footedness is good for him when it comes to just that punch, because he's hard to really move as a defensive player. At least this is based off the film that we see against him with Conference USA players. And but it's the athleticism. How's he going to handle the kind of athletic linebackers that are going to be blitzing at Notre Dame? How's he going to handle, the kind of athletic defensive lineman when he's facing 300-plus pounders on a relatively consistent basis? How's he going to handle that? Those are things that all concern me. And if it's a situation where, again, he's coming for depth, I get that, and we'll dive into what that means because we actually have questions about that. So I'm just right now going to stick to my opinion of the player. We'll get into what it means for the depth chart as we answer questions because there were some great early questions before the show even started about this. But that's going to be the interesting thing is can he adjust athletically to this level? That's the question. If he can, and let's just say hypothetically that the reason he didn't move a lot and didn't effectively do outside zones and second level is because the Marshall offense didn't necessarily ask him to do that. Let's just say that's the case. And he can handle it athletically. Then there's some value to this because he's a big, strong, experienced kid. And that's really the only thing that I can guarantee that Notre Dame is gaining is experience and power at the point of attack. Beyond that, it's a question mark at this point in time. And again, I know he's a second-team All-American. I get it. I have an Athlon preseason sports magazine, right? Or Athlon Sports preseason football magazine. They have him as a second-team All-American. I get that Pro Football Focus thinks he's wonderful. All I can do, and this is why I think all of you watch our show, all I can do is just tell you what I saw. Because when I first saw that Notre Dame was going after this kid, and he was a second-team All-American last year, I was like, okay, this could be good. Because if you can get a legitimate second-team All-American caliber player to come in and really step in at the one position that we have a concern about on the offense, that's great for Notre Dame. But the film tells a different story, and that's my concern.
Well, and you sent me his film yesterday, so I took a minute, and more than a minute. I took some time to watch him, and what I saw was a guy that's very powerful in a phone booth. If you're in his sphere of influence, he's probably going to be pretty good, right?
Well, I like that. In his sphere of influence. That's really good. I dig that.
But when they had him pulling and they had him kind of getting out in space, going to the second level, I was not as impressed. I thought his feet, you said heavy footedness. I think that's actually a really good description. His feet are slow. And it's just like boom, boom, boom. It's not, he doesn't have and I realize he's going to be playing guard, but he doesn't have the feet of a tackle where, good.
Nor does he have the feet of a center where he can snap and quickly step. I mean, he is a guard, pure and simple guard.
It disturbed me a little bit as to watching him get out in space, because also when he got out in space, he had trouble finishing blocks because he couldn't really move as well as I would like him to move. And I guess what worries me the most is the fact that, like you said, the competition is not the competition that he's going to be facing at Notre Dame. And if he was struggling at times with the competition in Conference USA, then that worries me about Notre Dame. Now, you said it. He's a strong kid. I was a little worried about how high he gets in pass pro. And when he gets high, that's when he allows guys to get into him and push him back, right? And no matter how
his base easily.
Exactly. And no matter how strong you are, if you are high, you're going to get overpowered. And I saw that happen on more than one occasion. When he gets low, he's strong as an ox.
Now, and the reason it wasn't exposed a whole lot is because, simply put, Marshall doesn't throw the ball a whole lot. And a lot of the throws that they do make are quick game, screen game. I mean, they do not do a ton of deep drop back passes. I mean, they don't do a lot of drop back passes at all.
Right.
So, I mean, that's something you have to consider is if Notre Dame is going to be a team that throws the ball a little bit more this year, how's that going to play? You know, I mean, Marshall, I'm looking at the stats last year. Marshall last year ranked 96 in the country in yards or passing attempts per game. So, you know, I think that's a little bit of a concern. And as you said, I mean, they were a team that throws a ton. So not only did they rank 196 in pass attempts, they throw a lot of screens in quick game.
Yeah. Yep.
And so, you know, that's going to be, to me, for Cain, that's going to be the two biggest adjustments he's going to have to make, right, as he transitions to the Notre Dame offense. Number one is he's going to have to work on being more effective working laterally. Okay. As a straight line guy, as a power guy, he does some really nice things. As a guy that's, you know, what was Notre Dame's best run play last year? It was outside zone,
where he has to get out.
We call that so
yeah.
You've heard me use the words fast swipe and slow swipe, right? And essentially what that means is that's a term. I don't even know if O-line coaches use that anymore. That was a term that I was taught very early on in my coaching career. Slow swipe is basically a zone blocking where you're kind of, it's more you're stepping, you're working kind of more vertically than you are laterally. And your footwork is more power oriented. You don't have to really worry about moving, you know, really fast. It's just quick, athletic, bam, hit and work to the second level. A fast swipe is more of that, you know, you're working for width. And a lot of times, you know, if you're a guard especially, and there's a guy on that tackle, you got to get out there and overtake that guy so the tackle can get outside. That requires some athleticism.
It's about getting leverage, and it's about getting out there quickly. And he doesn't have the feet to do that now.
He hasn't shown it. Now, again, what I'm giving him the benefit of the doubt here, if we're being objective and honest, is let's just assume that that's not something Marshall asked him to do. They did a lot of RPOs, a lot of screens where they kind of have the line block in the box, and then they would use the pass game to quickly get outside. Okay. Well, Notre Dame likes to run the outside zone. So I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt and say he's going to have to really work on opening up more when he steps, really working better for width and those type of things, because he's got some strength where if he gets his hands on you and he's got his feet moving and his base is in a good place, he can move you now. I mean, and that is something that I think he brings to the table. But his footwork is going to have to improve, and his ability to work for lateral quickness is going to have to improve a lot if he's going to be able to execute effectively in this offense.
I guess I was also, and this is nothing against the kid, he just looks too small to me as well. I mean, you don't have to have size, and we talked about that in the last podcast, is that, you know, you don't need those big lumbering linemen, but he still appeared to be undersized to me. Now, he can still be successful.
He has good weight, but I don't think he has I don't think that's necessarily great weight in my opinion.
Yeah,
which is, I think, partly what leads to why he can get thrown around a little bit.
And I think, you and I, when we were talking about it yesterday, I think it was either you or me used the word stumpy, and I don't mean that in a negative way. It's just that's kind of the way his body type looked, and it makes him look less athletic when he's trying to move around.
I think the first thing that Coach Quinn's going to have to work on with Cain is to sink, and I think it's like. It seemed to me at Marshall that he was trying to play taller, right? And so that's why he'd kind of get high. What I want him to learn to do is take advantage of your lack of size, right? You're short, okay? That means you should win the leverage battle all day long, right? So, hey, these blitzers aren't going over you, okay? They're trying to go around you or through you. They're not going to hurdle you like a running back in space, right? And if they do, that's fine. You just flip them up in the air. They're going to try to go through you. So keep your base. And that's the thing I think fundamentally is there are a lot of things that I think he can improve upon as he transitions into the Notre Dame offense that is going to help him be a more effective player. And that right there is going to be one is, hey, buddy, it's okay that you're short. We know you're short. You need to accept the fact that you're short, but play like a short guy, right? And him and Zeke Correll both need to do this. Like, look, never lose your base. Never lock your knees. And that's the thing is he locks his knees a lot if you watch him play. And that then stops his feet from moving. Once your knees lock, your feet aren't moving.
You're done. You're done.
That is a technical thing that I think can be improved upon. And that's why when I say, Vince, he's not doing outside zone based on what we saw now on film. But I do believe that there are some things that the coaching staff can do with him that can improve his foot quickness, not just from look, with all due respect, he's going to be, if he does commit to Notre Dame, he's going to be on campus somewhat soon, I would imagine. He's a fifth-year senior, so it's not like there's any summer school he's got to finish up, right? He's a sixth-year senior. He was a fifth-year senior at Marshall is what I meant to say.
So experience. He's got experience.
Right. But the point is he should be on campus soon if he does, in fact, make the decision that we anticipate he's going to make. And I think he's a guy that Matt Balis is going to work off some pounds off of. He doesn't have a good body. He needs to take the next couple months to maybe shed a little bit of that, transform a little bit of that. I think that number one is going to improve his foot quickness. I think we've seen Matt Balis really do a good job with his strength program with Jake Flint and all those guys of really getting the offensive linemen to be quick, to have good explosiveness. I think that's going to help him. So being in the Notre Dame weight program compared to the Marshall program, and that's no disrespect to Marshall.
No,
Marshall's a good Conference USA team, right?
It's different.
There's a reason Matt Balis is Matt Balis,
right? And I would love to see that him reshape his body a little bit. And I don't know if he's got the time.
There's only so
that.
much he can do that, but I do think there's a little bit that can happen in the next couple months.
Yeah,
but I think the other thing is they're going to have to, and I think this is something where Matt Balis and his crew are going to have a say in this as well, is work on getting him to bend. Bend your knees. That's the big thing. Use your leverage to your advantage. I think those are going to be things that can help speed up his feet just from a technique standpoint alone. Then when you get in the strength program and the conditioning program and you improve your flexibility, because he doesn't have very good balance. He doesn't have very good flexibility. Those are things that can be improved upon a little bit in the next 3 weeks, right? And he left a program where the coach got fired. So there was clearly some issues there. With the program at Doc Holliday, even though they were winning games this past year. So I'm trying to play devil's advocate. Okay, so he is officially committed. So he is.
Yep, just wanted to throw that up there. Just saw that on Twitter. So it is official. He is committed. So we just want to throw that up there. So I'll take it down.
And again, I just no, it's fine. I don't think he goes to Florida State, where from my understanding is they were telling him you're going to start. To Notre Dame, where they're not telling him to start if he doesn't think that he's going to start.
Absolutely.
So whatever they said to him the last couple of days, he's convinced that he's going to start for them.
Right.
That's just the reality. Now, hopefully he has to earn it, and that's fine.
I hope so.
So that's as objective as I can be about it. Look, there's some good things about him. There's some things that concern me. My biggest question is, as we get into this, is I don't see that projection. Right, because not everybody who's a great player at that level is a great player at any level. And as I said before, I just feel like if he was as good as people think he is, second-team All-American, one of the best guards in the country, why didn't he leave for the NFL after his fifth year?
Right.
Why does he need another 6 year? You can't tell me that, it's because he plays at a small school. Louisiana had a second-round draft pick last year. Robert Hunt starts for the Dolphins now. We've seen guys at that level get picked all the time.
Sure.
Miami of Ohio, Western Kentucky, they've all had guys getting taken in the first couple, 2-3 rounds as the offensive lineman. If you're that good, they're going to take you. Heck,
yes.
Brian Kelly recruited a kid named Joe Staley, who was a number 1 overall pick from from
Central Michigan.
So
small school, Max school.
Yeah.
So and I'm with you. And I want the kid to succeed. Obviously he's a second-team All-American for a reason, for whatever reason that is. He just there's things that we feel he needs to work on, and nothing leads me to believe that he won't.
He's not going to look like, Zach Martin or Nick Martin or Quentin Nelson or he has limitations, but
correct.
Can that experience and improved coaching and improved strength program, can that negate those limitations?
And that'd be great. That's the question. Because if he exceeds our expectations and we watch Notre Dame film and then we compare it to what we saw at Marshall film, and it's something completely different, then great.
Right.
That's awesome. We can only go off of what we've seen from Marshall and the competition that they've gone against, right? And I even had a buddy of mine who's an offensive line coach look at it, and he's like, wow, that's the guy that they want to recruit.
Every person that I know, so I've sent his film to several people that either coach or know offensive line, and everybody tells me the same thing. I don't know where this hype is coming from.
You don't see it.
But they also say the same thing. Really, really strong.
Yes.
If he gets his paws on you and he battles, that's the other thing. He competes.
Yep.
He's going to battle. And look, let's get to a couple of these comments, Vince. John Climax says, I don't like this transfer. Obviously, that's kind of where we're from. But then Mason says, I'm personally really excited about the Cain Madden pickup. Adding depth to O-line is always needed. The kid is an experienced All-American, and I'm not sure if we wanted to start two freshmen. And I understand where Mason's coming from.
I do too. And I will say also,
when you look at go ahead, Vince.
No, I was kind of echoing what you said before, but if they're going to put him at right, which means Rocco is probably either going to split time on the right side or whatever the case may be, it splits up the freshman. And that's really the only issue I had. If guys earn it, that's awesome. But there's still going to be times where being next to a veteran is still going to help you.
Yeah.
And I'm happy that maybe now Rocco slides to the right, and now you got Jarrett Patterson on the left.
Right.
You've
got arguably your two best linemen side by side. I think that's a better way to start.
I'm down with that. I am down with that part of this.
Yeah. Yes. And you don't have your two best linemen on the right side, but you now have two veterans on the right side, and Josh Lugg and this kid. And then so what Mason hits on, the experience part is huge.
Agreed.
You've got a kid. So he took over. When I looked at his bio, he took over early. He did not. He was originally a walk-on. He didn't get his first start until he was, I believe, a redshirt sophomore, redshirt sophomore, I believe. So his third year in college. He took over for someone who got injured, started 8 games. So he got that first year of experience. Then 2019, he comes out, and it's his first full year as a starter. He makes second team All-MAC. That was when he was he would have been a redshirt junior. I'm trying to think. Redshirt seniors are 5th years, right? That's why I hate the redshirt. So he, as a redshirt junior, so it had been his 4th year, was his first full year as a starter, and he was second team All-MAC, All Conference USA. Then as a 5th year senior, which is in 2020, so it was redshirt senior, is when he really blew up. Right. So he's got, I think he missed 1 game this year, but he's got a lot of experience.
2.5 years, 2.5 plus.
Yes, and I don't care what level you're playing at. Experience is experience. Yes. Getting that game experience, like understanding the difference of calls and all those type of things, that's all a challenge. That's all something that you only gain from experience. So that's good. Where I don't know if I'm willing to just accept it is, number one, the film tells me a different story. Number two is, I could make a case for you that this actually slows down Notre Dame's development going into 2022, because he's not coming back for a 7th year. He doesn't have a 7th year.
No,
right?
They don't do that.
And so you could now be in a situation where going into your Ohio State game next year, you're going to lose 3 starters again. You're going to lose Jarrett Patterson most likely. You're going to lose Cain, and you're going to lose Josh Lugg. Right? So now you're going into Ohio State needing to get these younger guys ready. Now, what does that do for Andrew Kristofic's development? What does it do for Quinn Carroll's development?
Rocco Spindler.
I'm working with the assumption that Rocco's still going to play.
So we'll have like 3 guys leaving, but 2.5 coming back.
No, you have 3 guys leaving still, but you have at least,
a guy with experience. Right. I gotcha. Okay.
Yeah, but at least Rocco got some playing time. But what about the other guard?
Yeah.
Right. What about the other tackle position? What is this going to do for their development? What does this do for? I don't think it slows down Rocco's development, because I think he's going to play. But if they don't play Rocco,
right,
and they just do the whole, we'll put him in mop-up duty, then
I'll be honest,
you've stunted his growth.
Gonna happen,
right?
But
so now my whole thought is, do you want to get a stud freshman and a talented redshirt sophomore and Quinn Carroll or Andrew Kristofic ready for Wisconsin by game 4, where you have to play Florida State and Toledo and Purdue, and your schedule's not after that is tough. Thanks, babe. But not, my wife just brought me tea.
Thought you're talking to me. That's all right.
No, sorry, buddy. But then now you're going to have to get that new lineup ready for Ohio State in game 1. You got Clemson on the schedule. So to me, I think this slows down the development for 2022.
Sure.
Having said that, you're going to have a better understanding of I believe, and we're not going to talk about this right now, but I'm going to tease it again because it's relevant. I believe this Notre Dame team is an outside contender for a title more than people think, right? More than people think. And the reason that I if this kid is as good as Notre Dame thinks he is, and as good as his accolades suggest, and I'm wrong, okay, which is what I'm rooting for. I want to be wrong about
me too.
Madden, because if he's as good as advertised and he's a legitimate second or third team All-American, even if he's an honorable mention All-American caliber player, that makes this line really good, which is the biggest question mark we had. So if Mason's correct, right, and if Mason's excitement is ended up being kind of rewarded when we get to the fall, that's great for Notre Dame.
Sure.
So that's kind of the bow I want to put on this Cain Madden stuff a little bit for me, Vince, and we'll answer some more questions about it. But if I'm wrong about him, this is huge for Notre Dame, and I think you have to somewhat sacrifice development for 2022 if he's as good as advertised. If he's not as good as advertised, this is going to be a mistake. So this is, to me, a true boomer bust decision, in my opinion. If he's not as good as advertised and you give all those reps to him instead of Andrew Kristofic or Quinn Carroll, you're just going to come back to bite you in the butt in 2022. And then you're not competing either year. But if he's as good as advertised and you're a playoff caliber team again or a title contending team again, then I can live with, now go coach these guys up. Go do your job.
Right.
Go coach these kids up next year.
Right.
Because it was worth it to go. Because it'd be the same kind of thing as, well, what if Aaron Banks decided to come back for another year and they're going to leave him a guard? You can say, well, this stunts your growth for 2020. No, you wouldn't say that. You can say, because you got a heck of a player there, and you need to do that. So, that's kind of where I'm at is if this pans out, this is huge for Notre Dame. And as a Notre Dame, from the fan in me and the analyst in me wants to be wrong on this. 100% wants to be wrong on this. And if I am, that's going to be big. That's going to be big.
Well, I'm with you. It just the film worries me. But again, he's got an entire offseason with a new strength coach, new offensive line coach, new teammates. I mean, all of it. And, we could be wrong. There's no question about that. So, all right, you ready to kind of move forward here a little bit? I got to shout out the 12-year-old birthday for Tommy's kid, man. Happy birthday. That's awesome. So definitely want to throw that out.
Hopefully Tommy's kid's not chewing on a seatbelt.
Just mean.
Little inside joke.
Just mean. It's because my kid is special in so many ways. All right. And he's got 2 years on Tommy's
I love
kid.
your kid. That's why I can joke about it, because that's my little dude.
Yeah, he's a good kid. Let's see here. Okay. Oh, well, I'll throw this up there anyway. Curious if it's been officially announced that it's Madden. Yes, we put that up there. Maybe it's linebacker number 3 with Tommy's son's birthday and linebacker commitment.
And that's in reference to the bat signals that went up from Notre Dame.
Those
were in reference to, from what I was told, those were in reference to Cain Madden.
Right. Okay. Gotcha. A lot of these are Madden comments.
Yeah, we can go and throw them up.
You want to throw them up there?
Yeah.
All right, Tommy. Whether we like the transfer or not, he's here. Hopefully he backs up last season's All-American season with another against better competition. Absolutely. Could not agree more. I hope I don't know agrees.
Anybody that doesn't agree with that.
Yeah, no doubt about it. David says, I wonder if Notre Dame players ponder why they take some transfers, like it's implying that I'm not good enough. Like Brian mentioned, we have the talent, but we don't develop them. If I was Kristofic, believe me, if it's hard to sit in the seat of Andrew Kristofic and Quinn Carroll and be like, wow, they must not think I'm good enough.
Yep.
I mean, and that's just, if I was them, and I don't know anything about what they're telling them or whatever, but I would be, that's a thought I would have personally. So that's rough. I get it. And it's like when we talked about with the cornerback room, right? When they're talking about bringing in a transfer and what kind of message does that send?
Sure.
You got to have a pulse of your room, man. You've got to understand.
But you also have to do what's best for your football team.
Absolutely.
And that's what I'm saying is if Cain Madden is as good as advertised, then hey, Andrew, I hate to tell you this, or hey, Rock, I love you, man. We think you have a bright future still, but this kid's going to help us win a championship this year, and that's ultimately the goal.
Yes,
right. And
no
but
question.
but if he's not as good as advertised, and this is why I say it's boom or bust. If he's not as good as advertised, and he still plays, it's going to tear that room apart.
Yeah,
and that's the danger. That's the danger.
That's
so hopefully, it's another reason I hope he's as good as advertised. Because look, let's be honest about players, right? As much as kids want to play, 95% of kids also know the game pretty well for that level. And you can watch a dude in front of you and say, that dude's better than I am. Right?
Sure.
I mean, he's better than me. Okay. I remember I thought I was a really good baseball player. And then as a freshman, I went to a baseball camp in Virginia Beach where Michael Kadire was playing. And I realized, I'm not that good of a baseball player. Right? I thought I was a really good high school quarterback. And I mean, I got recruited. I was getting recruited by Division I schools as a junior. And then I went and watched Ronald Curry play. And I was like, I'm not that good of a football player. Right. I mean, you know it.
Sure.
And when a kid's sitting behind a Liam Eichenberg or a Robert Hainsey or a Aaron Banks, you say, okay, look, that guy's a great player. That guy, that's my goal is to be as good as him. But when there's a guy ahead of you and you watch the film and you know this guy's not good or this guy's not better than you, that creates a lot of dissension.
Sure.
And we've seen that at positions in the past, especially at linebacker back around the 14-15 season, right? And that's the danger that Notre Dame gets into is if this kid's playing and he's not producing, it's going to create problems. But hopefully, again, at the end of the day, we all hope that this kid's as good as advertised because if he is, it's going to solve a lot of problems for Notre Dame if he is.
All right, I've got a non-Cain Madden question. I know that's going to shock you. But Brandon jumping in, and he says, if Notre Dame ends up landing Snead, could you see Freeman putting both him and Collie on the field at the same time? And if so, how would you do it? And obviously not including special teams.
Okay, first thing you have to understand, Brandon, and I think you know this, is the fact of the matter is just because a guy's being recruited to play one position doesn't mean that they're stuck in that position. And what I'm coming from is Prince Collie was recruited to play Rover, and Jalen Snead's being told he's going to play Rover. Not only do I think that they get Collie and Snead on the field together, I think they can get Collie, Snead, and Nolan Ziegler on the field together. Because the thing about it is Collie, as we talked about in our linebacker podcast last week, I think Prince Collie can play Rover or Will. And in the right type of defense, depending on what kind of weight he puts on, you're telling me Prince Collie can't be as big as Drew White when it's all said and done, right? So there's a role for that. I think that Jalen Snead is a guy that not only brings elite athleticism for that position, but to me, he could play Will. He's also a guy that could be a lot like Osita Ekwonu. Now, I'm not saying, right now Osita's playing Viper. I'm not saying that Jalen Snead is going to end up as a full-time Viper, but what I am saying is that there's a scenario in my head where when Notre Dame gets on third down, that kid is lining up on the edge and you're saying, sick him.
Yeah.
That's what you're doing, right? See that guy with the football? Go get him. Because he has a very unique twitch off the edge. He just doesn't have an edge player's body, which is why he's not a full-time edge. But to Brandon's question, I could see a role in which they're on the field together a lot. And I don't think that means that Nolan Ziegler's not going to be on the field either. I think that there's a lot of flexibility at linebacker in this defense. And Clark Lee's defense was that way too. And that's where there is one legitimate carryover is I think if you could play one position in Clark Lee's defense, you could play almost all of them mentally and technique-wise. It was just about, do you have the physical tools to play all of them? I mean, we saw that with Drew Tranquill. Drew Tranquill played, was an outstanding Rover in 2017, moves to Will, and he was just as good at Will.
Right.
We saw that with Osmar Bilal, actually, where he got better moving. Osmar was technically the starting Rover in 2018.
Right. Yes, he was.
And then he moves into Will, and he was even better. So we've seen that kind of movement. Tavon Coney, during his time under Clark Lee, played Will and Mike at different times. Right. Now, when he was a starter, he became a Mike. But when he wasn't the starter in 2017 in Elko's defense, he played both spots.
Right.
So there's a lot of flexibility, and it's not like back in the day where like your Mike linebacker was completely different and your Will linebacker was this kind of guy and your Sam was that kind of guy. There's a lot of flexibility now. So I think that they certainly can get all those guys on the field at the same time.
Agreed. All right. Matthew says, hey, Brian, I've enjoyed your insights since back in the Irish Huddle podcast days with the great Lou. Your film breakdown is certainly first class. So that's always nice to hear.
He has a follow-up to that. So he's buttering me up.
Oh, there we go. All right.
Which,
you're right.
By the way, Matthew, I do appreciate those kind words very much.
Yeah, no doubt.
No offense to Vince, but actually Vince will tell you the same thing. I miss doing shows with Lou.
Oh,
Lou was so much fun to do a show with for two reasons. One is, one of the things with you and I is we think a lot alike. We have similar backgrounds. We're coaches.
Right.
The great thing about doing shows with Lou is Lou was very much a I know my lane kind of guy.
Yeah, absolutely.
And he knew what he was great at, but he also understood that we have different backgrounds. We need to accent that. And he was so good at that. And he would start going down these trails, and it's like, okay, it's like you know this, Vince, because you hosted the show after I left.
Yep. And
it was, okay, do I stop him and bring him back, or do I just turn into the spin because what he's saying is so great? You know what I mean? It's like let's just go with it, because what he's talking about, the rabbit trail he's going down, is more exciting or more interesting than the original show that we were gonna do. Facts. So you'd kind of have to call that audible a little bit, but and just his recall ability to just, well, this reminds me of the game in 1975, and it was 65 degrees, and there was a 13-mile-an-hour wind, and it's just like there's a slight dew on the field, and it's just like what? Like, what are you talking about? And then you do the research, and you're like, wow, yep, that's exactly what was going on. But he was so much fun to do shows with. So I appreciate the kind words. Now let's get to your question.
Yeah. So in regards to your first class film breakdown, it's curious as to what you don't see.
I think you do first class film breakdowns, but you're wrong.
But you're wrong. He wants to know what you don't see in Steve Angeli. I know you don't like to rag on recruits, but he looks very good to me. Strong arm. Take care.
Yeah. I don't think he has a super strong arm. I think he has a good arm. I don't think he has a real powerful arm. I think the other thing for me that concerns me a little bit is the power that he does get comes because he's a high effort player. And what that essentially means is, there's some quarterbacks that you can just kind of flick the ball with a lot of velocity. Yep. And then there's guys that got to really they got to really coil up, and they got to really get a lot into it. He has to kind of he has to put more effort into throws than most top quarterbacks. Right. And the problem with that is just human nature is the more you put into a throw, physically put into a throw, the tighter your grip is going to be, the tighter everything is going to be. And that is going to impact your release point. It's going to impact your accuracy. And if you watch his film, both camp and high school, what you're going to see is a lot of just not great ball placement. And I think that's something that, to me, is an impact because of that. I think that is something to me that has to be improved upon. But the improvement's going to come from not being as high effort as a player, which means the ball's not going to be jumping out as much, right? I'd actually be willing to take that trade-off. I'd actually be willing to say, hey, look, be willing to – Vince will be right back, by the way. But be willing to not get as much power on the ball by being more accurate, and then improve your timing, and then improve your anticipation. And those are areas that he's not great at right now, but he's not great at it because he just doesn't have a lot of experience. So that's a little bit of an unknown for me. And so I'm willing to see him develop that as he goes into his senior season at Bergen Catholic. So there's some things I like about Steve. I think he's a leader. I think he's a tough kid. He reminds me a lot of Jack Cohn in that he's not a great athlete in that he's going to run for a bunch of yards. He's got really nice pocket presence, really nice pocket mobility. He can move around in the pocket. I just don't see big arm. I don't see fast release. I don't see a guy that's overly accurate as a passer. Now there's room for improvement, and I gave him a 4-star upside grade because I think there is plenty of room for him to improve, especially when you consider, Matt, that he's only started like 6 games in his high school career. So there's a lot of room for Steve to continue to improve his game. So I don't dislike Steve Angeli. I just don't think he's a guy that you look at for Notre Dame and say that's moving the needle. That's really what it boils down to. But there's certainly some things to like about Steve Angeli. And I think his character seemed I've never spoken to Steve, but I've had multiple people that have worked for us at different times that have spoken to him, and they love him. He's just a really nice kid, really engaging, really open, really honest, answers the phone. He doesn't big time anybody. He's recruiting his butt off for Notre Dame right now. So there's a lot of things to like about Steve, but it's kind of like, okay, is he any different than what Notre Dame has had at quarterback? Is he any different than a Liam Book? Is he any different than a Tommy Reese? Is he any different than a Jack Cohn? I don't think that he is. Jack Cohn, I think, is a good comparison for Steve Angeli. And I like Jack Cohn a lot. But is Jack Cohn going to be the reason why? Is Jack Cohn going to put a team on his shoulders and lead it to a championship like Trevor Lawrence can? No. But I'm not asking him to. Look, Steve Angeli is a lot like Jack Cohn. And he has he's a different player than Drew Pine, but he is like Drew Pine in this regards, where if you put a good team around him, a great team around him, you can win a lot of games with that kid. But what I think Notre Dame needs to get to is they need to get to the point where they're bringing in the more higher ceiling guys. That's all. And it's not a deal where I think he stinks and there were better quarterbacks on the board.
He's not a needle mover, right?
Right.
I mean, he's just not a needle mover.
Right.
He's not.
Right.
Yeah, right. He's not the guy that you're going to put the whole team on his shoulders and just say, go win us this game.
And the thing that Matt, I think you probably know about me, and for people who are still new to how I evaluate and those type of things. So if you're more of a YouTube subscriber and you haven't read a lot of my work over the years, which is fine, I'm someone that is always going to give you sort of as much as I can kind of give you both two types of analysis when a kid gets a recruit. Number one is just breaking down the kid, the positives and negatives. There's never been a kid Notre Dame has got that I haven't said, hey, he needs to improve here. Kyle Hamilton, I was the first person to call Kyle Hamilton a 5-star player. Vince, you know that.
Yep.
I wasn't when he was a consensus 3-star. I was like, this kid's a stud. I don't care what the rankings say. This kid's a stud, right? Say that about Darren Agu. I mean, even kids like that are just incredible talents. There's areas of their game they got to work on, and I'm going to talk about it. That's my job as an analyst.
Yeah, absolutely.
But there's also the other side of it, which is, okay, outside of this kid, how was this situation handled to where, yes, this kid's a solid player, but this is the kid they should have had, or this is the kind of class they should have had. So we did that with last year's offensive line class. Look, if you just look at that group of 5, it's a pretty good offensive line class, right? Like, man, it's, Rocco and Blake and Caleb Johnson's got some tools. Joe Alt's got some upside. Pat Coogan's a tough kid. But what should it have been? It should have been Wyatt Milam. It should have been, that kind of thing. And same thing with the 2020 group. Well, that's my thing at quarterback. Steve Angeli's a good football player. Steve Angeli is a kid that's got a lot of room for improvement. He's still a young kid. He's still a kid that was only a junior last year and had a COVID-shortened season. He's going to get better. He's a good football player. But my point was, there were guys like Cade Klubnik. There were guys like Drew Aller that you would have had a shot at had you done a better job of handling the quarterback board. And they didn't do that. Now, here's what I'm excited about, and this is going to take us to a different topic. I think Coach Reese made a mistake with the 2022 quarterback board. He has I don't know if he accepts that or not, but he's acting like he does. Because how they're recruiting the 2023 quarterback board is completely different.
Yeah.
They are all on. They have offered only 3 quarterbacks so far, but they're recruiting a ton of quarterbacks and showing them love. Tad Hudson, who's a top-ranked quarterback, is going to be on campus this summer. Ricky Collins, who I absolutely love, is going to be on campus this summer. They're supposedly going to get a visit from Arch Manning he's talked to. They've talked to the Johnson kid from Kansas. They've talked to at least a dozen quarterbacks that they're talking to.
Right.
And that, to me, is a coach that has adapted, a young coach that's going to go through some growing pains. I made mistakes when I was a young coach first getting on the recruiting trail. And he's learned from those mistakes, and they're now fixing it in 2023, which in reality, to me, is a better class, a better quarterback class.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there's way more studs in that class than there is in 2022. So, and you also got Tyler Buckner in 2021. So I can live with Steve Angeli in the 22 class. I really can.
Let me ask you this in regards to that. You got Buckner in the 21 class. He's obviously recruiting high-end guys in the 23 class.
Mm-hmm.
Does that make it okay? And I'm not calling Steve Angeli a miss. I'm not that. Please don't get me wrong. But he's not Tyler Buckner. And he's
okay.
Not
is it okay to take
okay
a kid who maybe doesn't have a higher ceiling in one of the classes?
Kind of like as the cream of the cookie. You know what I mean?
Yes. Like I wouldn't have done that as my strategy. Like, I don't think you say, hey, let's not take a kid with a higher ceiling because and the reason for that is because we still don't know what Tyler Buckner is going to be.
That's fair.
Right.
Yeah.
Having said that, if you're gonna miss, that's a good miss.
Yeah.
That's the thing I would say is
Yeah.
I do think they made a mistake. But the thing about Steve Angeli is I like Steve's floor. I do.
Yeah.
I think he could be a Jack Cohn kind of kid in time. And what did Jack Cohn? Jack Cohn didn't really kind of step into the field till he, really is I think it was his junior years when he became a starter. So it was his third year. Sure. And that's kind of the path that a Steve Angeli type of kid could be on. And so, yes, you expect Tyler Buckner to be the quarterback of the future, but if Tyler gets hurt or doesn't pan out, Steve Angeli's a good, tough kid that if you put good teams or players around him, you can win with him.
Sure.
And then he's going to then have to hopefully battle and hold off a younger, more talented player. If he does, then you're great. If he doesn't, then you're playing the better talent.
Right.
So the thing I like about Steve is this is different from some of the misses of the past. This is different than years where you didn't get a quarterback or you ended up with an Avery Davis type of guy or a player like that. Like, compare him to Brendan Clark. Steve Angeli does not have Brendan Clark's upside. He does not. He's got a much higher floor than Brendan Clark, in my opinion, because he's a more natural quarterback.
Sure.
So
I got you.
No, my biggest criticism of Angeli is not even necessarily about Angeli. It's about the way Notre Dame recruited that position.
Yeah, it was really strange the way they recruit. I remember when that was all going down. That was not ideal. Let's put it that way.
I just noticed this vertical IB thing.
Totally noticed that.
I didn't even do it on purpose.
I totally noticed that.
Okay, you're overdoing it a little bit there, buddy. Let's cover one of them up with the microphone. Here we go.
We got a super chat we got to throw up here. Let's see here. Whoop, I got to find it now. I am way off of the updated ones. Here we go from Jordan. Love Mailbag Friday. Think Spindler can beat out the unfortunate grad transfer offensive guard for the starting job. Think Notre Dame brought him in only for depth.
I think that's part of it, Vince. I mean, I think depth isn't part of it, and I think it says that they don't have a lot of faith in Andrew Kristofic and Quinn Carroll.
I agree.
I don't think this has anything to do with Rocco Spindler. I think this has to do with they don't have a lot of faith in those other kids, and Tosh Baker for that matter at this point in time. As far as 2021, which I'm actually more okay with that one because I never expected Tosh to be ready to compete for starting job in 2021. Okay. And by Tosh, I mean Tosh isn't losing reps because of this kid. What I was more thinking is if Tosh is ready to play, you're going to move Lug inside and Tosh steps in at tackle. That's more of what I'm referring to, which would still happen if Tosh ended up being your best player. I think this is more of a statement about Kristofic and Carroll and John Dirksen and those guys and not having a lot of faith in them, which you have to ask the question, is that what was the mistake that Jeff Quinn made with those players? Was it a misevaluation with almost that entire class? Olmstead's gone, and you've already given up on Kristofic and Quinn Carroll. So that was supposed to be a great O-line class. Or is this an indictment of the inability of them to develop younger players by not getting them on the field because their offense was too dull and they didn't blow people out and they didn't get them playing time? Is it an indictment of their ability to coach up the second team? I mean, that's a question that we're going to have to see. Or are they just not as good as everyone thought that they were? That's where we got to kind of figure it out. But in regards to Rocco, I don't have any idea of whether or not he's going to get an opportunity to start, right? No one's told me that this kid's definitely going to start and Rocco's not going to play or Rocco's whatever. Having said that, I'd be shocked if Rocco proves to be the best player. I'd be shocked if they didn't play him. I don't think there's going to be any hesitation to play Rocco if he proves to be their best guy. I don't, at the very least in a rotation.
Just based on what we saw in the spring.
Yes. Yeah. I think this is protection against Rocco not being ready. What if I had to guess. Well, and I want to make sure that this is heard. Yeah. This is 100% in my opinion. This is not coming from sources at Notre Dame or anything. That's just my opinion. That I think they intend to start this kid unless Rocco is ready.
And I think it's more of an indictment on the other guys.
I think it's more of an indictment on the inability to develop for me.
It's
an indictment by them on the other guys. For me, it's an indictment of Jeff Quinn's inability to develop.
No. I'm with you. I'm saying from their standpoint, from the coaching standpoint, they don't have a whole lot of faith in the depth chart. And so that's why this kid's being brought in. Not because they don't have faith in Rocco. It's because they don't have faith in the rest of the guys. That's the way I see it. And again, my opinion, But that's the way it comes off to me. So a couple more comments in here about that. Sean says, if this kid comes in, starts at left guard next to Fisher, that may not be a bad thing. And this allows Rocco to slide to right guard. So you don't have the two Frosh starting next to each other. I don't see them not starting Josh Lugg.
Yeah, I don't see any. I mean, unless he's hurt, I don't see any reason. I mean, Josh Lugg has started 9 games in his career.
Right.
He's been pretty good in 7 of them. And 5 of those 7 were at right tackle. Right. And I thought he played. He was better at I mean, I'm giving him a pass for his starts at center. He had no business playing center.
He had no business playing center.
But you go back. So Robert Hainsey got hurt against Virginia Tech in 2019. Go watch the next 5 games with Josh Lugg at tackle. I thought he did a pretty good job. I thought he was, especially for a guy being thrown into the Wolves the way that he was. So I don't see a scenario in which Josh Lugg doesn't start.
Right.
Barring injury.
And Mason says Lugg versus Rocco will be interesting. I don't see that being even a competition.
Lugg's a tackle.
It's not going to happen.
Right. Yeah. I don't get, maybe someone's reporting that. I don't know. I mean, so Mason and Sean, let me ask you guys this. Can you just let us know in the chat? Is that an opinion that you guys have based on your thoughts of Josh Lugg? Or is that something that somebody's reporting that Josh Lugg's going to move to guard and Patterson's going to play tackle? That's something I'd be curious. I mean, I wouldn't have a problem with that. I wouldn't have a problem with Lugg moving to guard and Patterson playing tackle, but Josh Lugg would be the starter at that guard position.
Yes.
I mean, Josh Lugg's going to start, and I don't know why that's
Lugg are starting. Period. Like that's
barring injury, that's going to happen and should happen. Josh Lugg's a good football player.
Yeah, no doubt. Let me see if I have to scroll all the way down. Okay, if they haven't come back yet, but I'll keep looking. I promise I'll keep looking. All right,
John's got another one real quick. John's, could this push Patterson to tackle? If so, could move Rocco to right guard and split the Frosh up. Yeah, I think we're all dismissing Josh Lugg on this. Could this push Patterson to tackle? Yes, but it would be more about Patterson moving to tackle and then Lugg and this kid being the guards.
Right.
That's what it would be.
Right.
And then I still would have Rocco battling this kid. Like, to me, the other guard spot is going to be handled by either Patterson or Lugg.
Period. Yes.
Yeah.
And Rocco's going to be competing against Madden. Like that's how I see this going down as well. Brandon has a question about recruiting. Brian, do you feel it's realistic for players at Notre Dame to play both ways? Mpemba in the 23 class has said that the staff could possibly see him playing in certain instances on both sides of the ball. There's no chance you're going to see a kid playing exclusively, full time on both sides of the ball.
Right.
That's never going to happen. Now, could they be a defensive player with like a package on offense? Yeah.
If you're special.
If you're really, really
special. I mean, we saw that with Charles. That's the only reason. Look, let's be honest. If Charles Woodson isn't playing offense and special teams, he doesn't win the Heisman.
Right.
I'm not saying he shouldn't have won the Heisman. I mean,
but that's what's got to be.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah. You have to be special not only athletically, but you also better be special mentally because that's technically. A lot. And technically, that's just a lot.
I mean, to me, Brandon, that's just more of what you say to a kid to get him to your school.
Yep.
I mean, I think that's more of what that is. And it doesn't mean you don't try, but I don't see it working out. But is it realistic for certain kids? Absolutely. Especially kids that are really good at both ways. So like you could get into a situation, to your point, Vince, like let's say this kid Mpemba, I mean, he's got like, so I think he's at IMG now, but if you watch this kid play, he's a freaky athlete. Let's say he shows up to Notre Dame and he's got like 40-inch vertical jump by his sophomore year, right? So you know what? We're going to put this kid in our red zone package because he's 6'4", he's 245. By that point in time, he would be. And he was a really good, tight end receiver in high school. We're going to throw him some fades. Okay, fine. Right. But it's not going to be a situation where the kid's going to come in and be a full-time player or even a rotation player on the other side of the ball. The game is just too taxing for that, in my opinion.
It's just not going to happen. Yeah. You're not huddling up.
Really wear him down.
Yeah, that's just not going to happen.
But his question was in instances and in
packages.
In instances, yes.
Absolutely.
I could see, but he'd have to be a special player. It's not something we're going to see very often.
Right. And this kid's still a sophomore in high school.
Right.
So, maybe he's now technically a junior, but by like a day.
Yeah, I guess so, yeah.
By like a day. So, Kelly Murphy Garvey, excited about any transfer.
Kelly's joining the chat.
Yeah, man.
I've known Kelly going back to the Irish Eyes days.
Wow.
That's how long I've known Kelly.
Wow. Okay, that's a minute.
Yeah.
How would you rate the offseason for Brian Kelly and the program?
So I love a Caleb Evans. And that's the situation where a Caleb Evans, I hope that Cain Madden is to the offense what I think Caleb Evans would be for the defense, which is, here's what I heard from the Notre Dame coaches and the sources that I talked to around the program after spring. Really like the development we saw from Clarence. Cam is everything we thought he was going to be, and Tariq really came on. They were excited about their cornerback depth chart. What I was told is they really weren't pursuing any corners. Then a Caleb Evans went on the market, and that changed everything. But it was a change because unlike the offensive line where you feel you have a weakness that needs to be filled, they didn't feel that about corner. And they went after Caleb Evans because it's just he's too good to turn down. He's too good not to play. He makes our defense significantly better. And that's why I say if Cain Madden is to the offense what it actually is to the offense, what I think Caleb Evans would be to the defense, that's a home run, like big home run.
Yep.
So a Caleb Evans is a guy to me that makes this defense better like that. I mean, I think the corners are going to be good. He makes the corners really good.
Yeah.
He also improves the entire secondary because, and I had someone sent this to me in a chat today, and he's right. What he said to me was, if a Caleb Evans comes, then that allows you to move Clarence Lewis and Tariq Bracy to play some of the nickel.
Right.
And then that prevents you from having to get that third safety on the field because you and I are more concerned about the depth at safety than we are in anything.
No doubt.
And then also if Cam Hart doesn't pan out at boundary, you can put a Caleb Evans, or if Cam gets hurt, you can put a Caleb Evans in the boundary. You can put Clarence Lewis into the boundary. So this gives you such a bigger margin for error at cornerback.
Flexibility,
but the length, because from my understanding is they're recruiting him to start out at field. That doesn't mean he's going to start. He's going to have to beat guys out, but he would. He's really good. And that's hasn't anything negative to say about Clarence Lewis, who I think is going to be a really good player at Notre Dame and was pretty good as a freshman. And if Caleb Evans doesn't come to Notre Dame, Clarence is going to have a good year. Yeah. And Tariq Bracy. It's just that's how good a Caleb Evans is to me. And he's a guy that I just like a Caleb Evans a lot. And I think you talk about he's almost 6'2", about 6'2", long arms. He'd be your shortest corner. I mean, that's some serious
because that's what they've been recruiting. Yeah, right.
And that would be great. And the other thing, too, is Caleb has a lot of experience playing man coverage. They played a lot of man coverage at Tulsa. A lot of man coverage.
And that's what Freeman wants to do.
Exactly. And so whereas Notre Dame didn't play a ton of man, so that's still a work in is still a work in progress for Clarence.
Sure.
And I think this also gives Clarence another year to continue to develop because let's not forget, technically, Clarence's freshman season didn't count.
That's true.
He's technically a redshirt freshman.
Yeah.
So that's one that would be big for me. And in regards to how would I rate the offseason for Brian Kelly in the program, I have been beginning with, January 4th when they hired Marcus Freeman. Yep. From that point on, I've had very few complaints about Brian Kelly's offseason. I think they've done a great job. I mean, getting Jack Cohn, huge plus, right? That's a grad transfer that already happened. That was a home run, in my opinion. Hiring Marcus Freeman, and not just hiring Marcus Freeman, but the manner in which he had to go about getting Marcus Freeman. To me,
stole him away from LSU.
Kelly understands that he's got an opportunity. He's got a window, and he's got to do what it's going to take to get to that point. Now, there's some things I think he still needs to do that he hasn't done yet, but that's a different thing. But the Marcus Freeman move, he's been way more involved in recruiting. Look, I've written a couple articles at Irish Breakdown, Kelly, where I've talked about this is the most important month of recruiting that Notre Dame is going to have because of the high volume of talent, just big-time talent players. Well, those guys aren't visiting just because they want to see South Bend. Right. Those guys are visiting because the staff has done a phenomenal job, and that has included Brian Kelly. So the first offseason that Brian Kelly does what I've been begging him to do for years, all of a sudden, all these big-time players are showing up.
It's not a coincidence.
It's not a coincidence. Now, part of that is the fact that they've had so much on-field success. But look, I believe right now Notre Dame has an opportunity to have their best recruiting class in a long time, and I'm more confident that it's going to happen than I've ever been because, A, the volume of big-time players that's coming on campus.
Right.
Where in the past, it'd be like one really good running back, and if you got him, hope. But now there's like three.
Right, exactly.
It's like you got to hope you can get like barrel, baby. Like they're going to turn. They're going to have to turn down a top 100 caliber linebacker. They just are.
Because you can only take so many.
Right.
It just, yeah.
And
right.
so, they're to me, they're doing a great job. They're also finding it's not just about recruiting highly ranked players, it's talented kids. So I give them huge props on what they've done. I mean, this has been one of the 5 or 6 best stretches of program development that Brian Kelly's had. Now it's about finishing, right? Now it's about continue to do what you need to do. There are other things that I'm not giving him credit for, but I'm not dinging him for because I don't know what's going on behind closed doors. Wide receiver, I don't know what's going on behind closed doors. So I can't speculate that I can't say Brian Kelly's done a bad job with how he's handled Dell Alexander this offseason. I don't know how he's handled Dell Alexander. I don't know how he's handled Jeff Quinn. I don't know how he's handled some of those areas because we haven't seen it, right?
Right.
So until we see it, I can't comment on it, and I'm not going to assume he hasn't done it when he's done some of these other things. So I'm as encouraged by this offseason as I've been in a long time for reasons that aren't just about the talent. So past years when I've been encouraged, Vince, it's just about they have a really talented team coming back. And I don't even think you can screw that team up. Right?
Right.
But now it's about they got a really talented team coming back, and Kelly's doing things that he needs to do to on his end to get that program up another step. So far, Kelly, I've been encouraged by the offseason of Brian Kelly. I think I'm as excited now. And again, I mean, is it perfect? No, we've talked about the Marshall thing, right? But that's I mean, no coach is perfect. I mean, Nick Saban's made moves when he hired that guy Tosh to be his defensive coordinator. That's not going to work out, but he quickly realized it wasn't going to work out and moved on pretty quickly. And Urban Meyer's made some coaching hires when he thought Tom Beck and Ed Warner was going to be a workable offensive coordinator situation. That's not going to work out, So every coach makes mistakes. No coach is perfect.
Sure.
So yeah, there's things I can nitpick if we wanted to focus on the negatives, but I got to tell you, this is one of the best off seasons, if not the best off season that Brian Kelly's ever had by his own choice. Right. That's the difference.
Right.
The post 2016 off season was phenomenal.
Mm-hmm.
Mike Elko, Clark Lee, Chip Long, Matt Bayless, all those guys. But some of that was needed. The choices Brian Kelly's making now with Marcus Freeman and some of these other things are choices he's making because he knows it. He has to do it, and he wants to do it, and that's encouraging, Vince. That's why I have probably more optimism. I've been more consistently optimistic in praising the staff than I've been in a long time, because that's all my criticism and praise is going to be based on what they do, and that's where it comes from. And I think it's been a really, really. I'm not going to say great yet, but I think it's been a really, really good offseason for a program that's been really, really good in recent seasons.
No, I'm with you. I'm excited. I really am. And that kind of goes to one of our next questions. And Notre Dame 2164. Where do you guys rank our running back duo? I honestly can't find another team that I would trade what they got for what we have.
So if you haven't bought it, whip it out. Right. One of the Vince.
Sorry.
Be nice.
I hang out with high school
I should
kids
say
too much.
Behave. So what I'm going to do is one of the nice things that Athlon does is they rank position groups. So I'm going to pull up their top 10 position groups because they have Notre Dame 4th, which is high. I mean, it shows that there's a lot of respect for Notre Dame.
Okay.
So let's kind of go over the other teams and we'll kind of talk about what those groups have as the position group. So when you look at the running backs, they have Alabama's running backs number 1. To me, that is all about hype and recruiting rankings. So that to me, that's what I see that for. But those, I mean, Brian Robinson is one of their backs. They have Trey Sanders, who was a 5-star kid that got hurt last year. So there's some talented kids there. They don't have the returning production that Notre Dame has. So I think that's a projection pick a little bit, Vince.
Yep.
In my opinion. They have Georgia number 2. Georgia has a really good backfield coming back. They have James Cook, who's kind of a hybrid guy. You've got Zeus White coming back. And Zeus Zeus was a kid that was a 5-star recruit coming out of high school, and he tore his knee up twice. Oof. And it took him a while to really get going. But last year he started to kind of come along, ran for, looking at his stats now, had 779 yards in only 8 games, had 11 touchdowns, had some nice things. You've got James Cook, Kenny McIntosh. You've got Kendall Milton, who's a freshman last year. So they're pretty loaded at running back, but I think that's also another projection pick, which is fine. I mean, that's what the preseason is for, right? We're projecting that Jack Cohn's going to do this and the receivers are going to do that. So I think that's fair. Texas A&M, they have next at number 3. I think I really like their starting running back, Isaiah Spiller. I think he's a good football player. I would not take him over Kyron Williams. They had a freshman running back last year that did a nice job, Devin Akane. He was a good football player. And then they've got a kid named Anais Smith, who's more of a pass catcher than he is a runner. So I would disagree with that one, but they're not nuts, right? Like it's more of like they're both pretty good. I personally would take Notre Dame's.
Sure.
And then you got Iowa State with Breece Hall. Oklahoma's ranking is going to take a hit because I believe that included Seth McGowan, who's now been kicked off the team.
Okay.
And then you got Ohio State. Ohio State's an interesting one because Ohio State, to me, Master Teague's a good player. I'd take Kyron Williams, but they got a freshman, Travion Henderson, who I think is going to be a stud. So there's some good backfields to 2164's question. I think Notre Dame, hands down, has a top 5 backfield. I personally would put them second or third, somewhere around there. But I think you can make a strong case for some other teams. I think Georgia has the best backfield coming back. I do. I think it's just because the depth that they have. I mean, their 4-string running back is really good, and he's not a freshman.
Yeah.
I don't care about recruiting rankings, Vince. I just think these kids are, good. I think that Kendall Milton is a guy that could start in a lot of places, and he's probably going to be their 3rd running back this year. James Cook as an out of the backfield weapon is a really good football player. I would probably put Notre Dame second because I'm a lot higher on the freshmen than I would imagine a lot of the national analysts are. So that's but I think that you're seeing right now, it's not just Notre Dame people that have a lot of respect for the backfield coming back. It's also national people are starting to see that too. So definite top 5.
Well, and I think top 5. And I think you make a good point about the freshmen because a lot of, like you said, a lot of these national, they're not as in tune to the recruiting of each individual school and blah, blah, blah.
Right. They're just going off recruiting rankings.
If we're just talking 1-2 punch, I love what Notre Dame brings to the table and just the versatility, being able to get out and catch balls and all of that. I'm with Notre Dame 2164. I love Notre Dame's duo, and I would take them. And I get where you're coming from. But man, I'm riding with these two. I'm excited for what this season brings. Got to jump to a super chat, Brian. Matt, he says, thanks for the thoughtful response. This is so fun. And I agree. This is so fun. But one more, when Notre Dame wins the title, it will become will it become BK's best attribute as a coach? All right. I completely
butchered that. Because BK's best attribute coach is, and I think it's 2. I think number 1, it's the ability to surround himself with a great coaching staff. And
we weren't always able to say that, by the way.
Correct. Some people look at that as an insult to Brian Kelly. It is not. That has to be the number 1 attribute of any great coach.
Yes.
I don't care who you are. You're not winning titles because of your greatness. You're winning titles because you surrounded yourself with great coaches. Lou Holtz, when he was winning early in his career, he was surrounded by great coaches. As he started to replace those guys with not great coaches, you started to see the program go down. Okay? So he's starting to do that. And I think, again, I go back to the Marcus Freeman thing. His willingness to fight to get Marcus Freeman here was big time.
Huge.
That's so important.
Huge.
So important. The ability to keep Mike Elson here. And look, Mike Elson's had a lot of overtures, especially in recent years.
Yep.
The ability to keep him here and keep him happy.
Well, the most recent was what? DC at Purdue?
I don't know. Yeah, I don't know if he was officially offered that job, but there was definite interest there.
Yeah.
I don't know if he had that interest because, again, I think Coach Elson's happy at Notre Dame. Getting Mike Mickens last year to replace Todd Light when Todd Light stepped away from coaching was a home run hire.
Yes.
Now, is it perfect? No. But if he wins a national title, he's going to make some of the necessary changes. So, for example, I'm not high on Coach Alexander, the job he's doing now. I think Del Alexander, when he's doing what he needs to do, is a really good football coach. So if Notre Dame wins a title, it's because Coach Kelly was able to get the most out of Coach Alexander. It's because he was able to get the most out of the coaches that he hired, right? That's the thing. Now, are they there right now? No. But if they win a title, that will be the reason for it. And then number 2, I do think Brian Kelly is really good at the big picture stuff. And I think that's why they have been able to have a level of sustainability. I think that you hire the coach, the assistants to be the rah-rah guys, to be the inspirational guys. You don't win. Look, the story about save Jimmy Johnson's butt, for me, that's a great story, but that's not why they beat Miami. They beat Miami because they got ready to beat Miami Monday to Friday.
Sure.
That's why they beat Miami. Did that give him a little extra piss and vinegar at the very beginning? Yeah, but let me tell you something, right? Great speeches in the locker room are gone the first minute you get hit in the mouth.
Yeah,
they don't matter anymore. It's about your preparation. It's about the preparation that you put in during the week of practice, during the offseason, all that kind of stuff. And that's why Brian Kelly's been – I mean, he gives some really – like when somebody made this comment recently in one of the chats, like, I don't get moved by Brian Kelly's comments. And he just doesn't. He's not a guy that's going to –
That's not who he is.
But I don't care.
Yeah, it doesn't matter to me either.
You don't win games because of pregame speeches. You win games because of the preparation you put in Monday to Friday. I think those are the areas where Brian Kelly has done a good job of establishing a culture in which that is important. And I think they're getting back to that, which is why we've seen some of the success. So if they win a title, it will be because of those two things. And that to me is that's the two most important things for head coach. It truly is. I don't think you have to necessarily look. Dabo Swinney was never a great coach as an assistant. He was a good receivers coach, but nobody was beating down their doors to hire him as their offensive coordinator.
Sure.
But that doesn't matter. He knows how to run a program. He knows how to get the most out of those kids Monday to Friday.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely.
That's it. And he's hired a great staff. Now, their staff has taken some hits recently with some guys leaving that are really talented, and they've kind of taken a little bit of a step back. But their step back is still, we lost in the semifinals instead of
really good.
Winning a title.
It's still really
right.
Good. Yeah.
But absolutely. That to me is what makes a great coach, in my opinion.
All right. D-Rock wants to know if you've heard any news on the Evans defensive back from Tulsa after his second day on campus.
It went great. I've been told it went Notre Dame. Notre Dame did everything possible to get a Caleb Evans. If he decides to go somewhere else, you will not hear me say one critical thing of the staff. They did everything they possibly could have done to get this kid.
And who's on his list?
Completely. So he visited Texas already. He was at Notre Dame Wednesday, Thursday. He's now at Missouri.
Okay.
And that, I mean, he had a top 5 that included Jackson State and Texas Tech, but nobody thinks he's going to go to one of those two schools. For the last 2 weeks, what I've been told is it's Texas, Missouri, and Notre Dame in no specific order.
Particular order. Gotcha. Okay.
So he's at Missouri now. And look, like I said, I think Notre Dame's in a really good place there. He's got to finish the Missouri visit first, right?
Sure.
But I think they did a great job presenting, here's what we can do for you on and off the field. Yeah. And the presentation that he was given cannot be matched by anybody else. I'll just leave it at that.
That's fair.
There's nothing anyone else can do. But he may ultimately decide, I just want to stay closer to home. That may be it.
Is he Texas or Missouri?
He's from Texas.
He's from Texas. Okay. Yeah. Yep. Gotcha. All right. Brian, hey, Coach, I asked last week about a Hey Rookie type of show. I was wondering what your thought on doing one on the Notre Dame draft class if time available.
Oh, so you were asking if, like, we did one? If we would do one?
Well, we wouldn't have access to people like taking video of them and all that fun stuff. So
yeah, I'm not quite sure of your Brian. I apologize, but I'm not quite sure of your question. Do you mind clarifying? Are you like saying what I like for someone to do one on Notre Dame, or for us to do one on Notre Dame?
I mean, I'll volunteer.
So yeah, great. I mean, because I would like to get some of those guys on the show, and I've been working on that last couple of weeks, but we'll have to.
No doubt. Let's see here.
Brian's got another one down there. There you go.
This one? Yep. He goes, Brian and Vinny, are you going to do a post-visit type of show? I assume, meaning like once all these guys visit, so that would be the end of June? Is that what he's referring? We're going to do
he's probably referring to each weekend when guys do it. We're going to do as best we can. And the problem is I'm in the process of trying to hire new recruiting staff. I don't have one in place right now.
Yeah.
I got several people that have applied. I'm going to hopefully get to those this weekend.
Good.
But our recruiting guy is not around anymore. And we started Blake Sofa last week, but Blake's just so new to this. So we're going to do our best. I'm trying to step up. I'm talking to kids. I'm talking to sources and all that kind of stuff. But we will wrap up each weekend as best we can. Yeah, there's no question about it.
We'll always get the news of the day for sure.
Yep, no question.
Searcher Green says, hey, Rocco is going to need a breather from time to time. Quality pickup. If that's the case, yeah, sure. That's fine. Okay, AJ, what did you think of Will Fuller coming out of high school? Did you ever expect him to become the star he was?
Great question.
And did you know he was that fast, or was that speed something that developed in college?
I liked Will Fuller coming out of high school. I didn't love Will Fuller coming out of high school because he was small and he wasn't that fast.
Yeah.
Look, Will Fuller will tell you he wasn't that fast in high school. I've shared this story before. I was covering the opening. And actually, this is the year that Robert Hainsey was there. That's how I just always remember this. And it was the first day of the camp, and all the receivers are working out and they're going through drills, and they're just doing like on the speakers during the thing. They're just doing like past performances by well-known players. Well, Will Fuller ran I think it was like a 4.58 or something like that at the opening. It was a 4.5 something. It was in the 4.5s.
So nothing spectacular.
No.
Still. Yeah.
He was a really good football player. And the thing I liked about Will coming out of high school is he was a two-way player. And I had a buddy of mine who liked him more as a cornerback in high school. And I think there was some merit to that because he could turn really well,
Sure.
and had nice recovery speed, and he was a tough kid and all that kind of stuff. But he had really good ball skills in high school, which we saw that at times in Notre Dame. And ball skills don't mean you catch every throw. It's like he had good concentration and could catch in traffic. And we saw that. I mean, think of the touchdown pass he had against Temple that was over two guys, that won that game. But I liked Will coming out. I didn't think he was going to be what he was because he wasn't that fast. I mean, and he'll tell you that. Notre Dame people tell you that. And the opening results will tell you that. Because and the thing about the opening is they inflate numbers. That's the other thing. They already inflate numbers, and he ran a 4.5 something.
Yeah, right.
So you see that every now and then. It doesn't happen often, AJ, but every now and then some kid he hits that, his body just matures and he just takes off. I mean, I have a cousin who's about 6'3", pretty big guy. When he was a junior in high school, he's like 5'11", 155 pounds. It's rare, but we were always waiting for his sons to hit that growth spurt, and it never happened. But
hey, now.
Yeah.
I kept being told I was going to get a growth spurt in college. Still waiting. So, all right, Mason, do you think a lot of Madden's problems can be coached up? He is just not athletic enough, or does he lack the technique as well? I think it's a little bit of both. To be honest with you, some of it can be coached. Some of it can be taken care of in the weight room, or, as far as like kind of reshaping some things a little bit. But some of it's technique. And you are not. You described him, and obviously you're going to say something too here, Brian. But you described him as a what did you say? A hard stepper or heavy stepper? Heavy footed. Yeah,
got heavy feet.
You're not fixing that. Like that. That's not going to be fixed in 3 months. That's just who he is. And
right.
But
yeah,
go ahead.
You can counter that by improving his technique.
Right.
And so the thing is here's what great coaches and great strength programs do. They not only maximize your strength, but they find ways to mask your weaknesses.
Right.
Right. And so I think they've done that with players in the past on the offensive line. I think they've done a decent job of that. That's the thing where to answer your question, to Vince's point, it is both. He is never going to be a really athletic, agile player.
Right.
So it's up to Notre Dame to figure out ways to maximize and minimize that. How do I take advantage of the things he does well? How do we mask the things that he doesn't do well? But then how do we get the most out of those deficiencies? So if he is heavy, slow-footed, then we got to do the best job we can in 3 months to get his feet as quick as they possibly can be. Then we have to make sure that his technique is sound enough to where it doesn't become a problem.
Doesn't affect him as much.
Right,
yeah,
right. And then you do schemes. So maybe you say, hey, look, we're not a real great outside zone team with Cain Madden in there. But you know what Cain Madden can really do? He can down block and hammer somebody. So maybe you use some of your pin and pull stuff.
Sure.
Right?
Sure.
Maybe you do some more of the G scheme where he can kind of just quickly kick out and wrap somebody. So you can make some schematic alterations to benefit what he can do.
I mean, that's what good coaches do. You adjust to the skill sets of your players.
If you're going to ask him to be an outside zone guy all day, you're going to have some struggles with that.
Yep.
Because you say, well, hey, look, last year's guards weren't great athletes. Aaron Banks and Tommy Kramer, true, they were better athletes than he was, but they were way longer. That's the other thing. So Aaron Banks could get to the second level, and even if he was a step late, he was so flipping big and long that he could still get a body on it. This kid's 6'1" with short arms. It's a different situation. So you as a coaching staff have to make sure, so then don't ask him to do a lot of things getting second level.
Yeah.
That's going to be the key. So, I do think some of this can get coached up, Mason, and I think that's a great question. I do think some of this can be it's like we talk about with freshman receivers. If your freshman receiver doesn't know the entire route tree, then don't ask him to run the entire route tree. Find what he does well and give him a package to do that. Now, Cain Madden doesn't have as big of an issue as he doesn't know the offense and all that kind of stuff. He's going to pick up the offense quickly. I mean, he's a 6-year senior. He's going to pick that stuff up.
He's been doing this for a minute.
Right. Yeah. He's going to understand the need to communicate and all those type of things, but it's about can you limit his deficiencies with how you coach him up, get his technique. Right. You got to tell him, hey, look, kid, your technique needs to be impeccable. Right. It needs to be impeccable if you want to play for us. And then it's our job to coach you up and get you to that point. So, yeah, I do think some of the things that are deficiencies for him on film can be improved, but it's not going to he's not going to become athletic all of a sudden. Right. He's not going to become a quick-footed guy all of a sudden. It's about getting the most out of his heavy feet and then making sure that you're not asking him to do things that his heavy feet are going to limit him from doing unless you just want to find somebody else to do it.
Sure. All right, Brian is back. You mentioned the other day that the corner from Tulsa had 2 years available. If he plays well and drafts high, how much credit will Notre Dame get for getting him to the NFL?
A ton.
Yeah, I was going to say a lot. Because if he was NFL ready right now, he would go. I mean, right? He's a graduate. He's been around long enough. He could go to the NFL right now. So if he goes after being at Notre Dame for 2 years, Notre Dame
or even a year,
credit. Yeah,
even a year. I mean, look, when Nick McLeod did what he did, nobody was like, "Oh, look at the great job NC State did." I mean, they did a good job coaching him up to the point where he could be successful at Notre Dame. But Notre Dame took him to that next level. Nick McLeod was a much better player at Notre Dame than he was at NC State.
I agree.
Full stop. And because I think Mike Mickens is a darn good cornerbacks coach. And I think if this kid gets coached up and they're going to be saying similar things like, man, this kid was a good player last year. Mike Mickens and Marcus Freeman coached this kid up and he was a great player this year. So yeah, I think Notre Dame's now, is Notre Dame going to get full credit? No, but they'll get a lot of credit for that. A lot of credit for that. That's a good question.
Yep. Jack, hey y'all, thanks so much for the prayers for my niece. She is doing amazing. She just got diagnosed with type 1 diabetes and we had no idea. So thanks to my IB family. It's what it's all about, man. It's what it's all about. We're taking care of each other. And thanks for giving us the update though. Jack, we really appreciate that. Notre Dame 21-64. I rewatched the playoffs last year, and the main difference I saw between Notre Dame and the other playoff teams was offensive scheme / philosophy and also tempo. I agree. It was philosophy. You can't tell me that Notre Dame didn't have the players. I'm sorry. Mm-hmm. Yes, at some spots there were better players on the other team. I get that. But from a philosophical standpoint, offensively, they were behind. And then there was also some areas on the defensive side where we put ourselves in position to get beat, right? I mean, that just is, and that's from a coaching standpoint that you can't ask guys to do stuff they can't do. And that happened a couple times defensively and offensively, it just was not aggressive enough. So, and we've talked about a lot of this, Brian, but I agree.
Yep. I agree. Hey, David Knight coming through with a big super chat.
Didn't see that. Hold on. Let me scroll down here.
I got it.
Okay, thank you, sir.
This is an interesting question. Why was Steve Berline a better NFL quarterback than Brady Quinn and Jimmy Clausen? I even think Jimmy was better than Brady. I don't think Jimmy was better than Brady. I think Steve Berline he was a very talented guy and he was a very smart guy. I think the only reason that Steve Berline wasn't considered a better college player is because he spent most of his career playing for Jerry Faust. And then he spent 1 year in Lou Holtz's offense, which isn't exactly geared towards that. So I just think he was more talented. I mean, physically talented. I think the other part of it about it too is Steve was a more accurate quarterback.
Yeah.
But he also played in an era where accuracy wasn't what it is now. And that's what I think. That's what I think kind of was the issue there. To be completely honest with you, I think it was about just. He had better tools. And but I also think part of what Brady was Brady didn't go to a good place. I think Cleveland for years was my biggest if you got drafted by Cleveland, you just weren't going to suck. And people say, well, he went to other teams. But what you have to understand is it's like a lot of the kids that come to Notre Dame or go to another school and they transfer and they're just never the same guy you thought they're going to be. Because that crucial development period was there. Right. And he lost that. And nobody was ever really going to give him that opportunity. And the other part about it too is, a lot of NFL teams don't want to coach you on technique. It's like there were some things I think Brady could have improved upon technique-wise. It could have improved his accuracy a little bit, but he was never going to be an on-point kind of passer. And a lot of the stuff that he did that was so good in the NFL, in college, you're just not going to do that stuff in the NFL. I mean, how many back shoulders did they throw to Samardzija and Stovall? That was That was a big part of their success. Well, those things don't translate as well to the NFL.
Yeah.
And I think Brady had a little bit of a slower release. So I think that factored into it as well. But with Jimmy Clausen, Jimmy just was a stiff. I mean, athletically, he just was a stiff. I mean, that's what it was. But Jimmy's issues, let's just say this. Jimmy's issues had a lot less to do with his physical talent than it did about anything else. Look, you don't play as long as Steve Berline played, and I'm going to look his stats up right now because there was one year where Steve Berline led the NFL in passing yards. You don't play as long as Steve played if you aren't a great teammate, right? I mean, he played until he was 38 years old. His first year in the NFL was 1988. He played until 2003. That's like, what, 15, 16 years?
That's crazy.
You don't do that if you're not a guy that's considered a good teammate. And and he didn't have a breakout season until he was 34. That was the year with the Panthers in '99. He was 34. That he threw for over 44. He led the NFL in completions, led the NFL in passing yards at 4,436. He had 36 touchdowns. Led the NFL in yards per game at 277.6. But you don't get to that point as a 34-year-old. On however many teams he had been on by that point in time. So he was at the Raiders, the Cowboys, the Cardinals, the Jaguars, and the Panthers. So fifth team if you're not a great teammate. And that's that's just it's different than like Deshaun Kaiser's situation where Deshaun just keeps getting bounced around because he's not a great teammate, but he's really talented. He won't be in the league when he's 34 years old if he doesn't change, if he hasn't changed, right? Steve was in a different situation. And I think that's a big reason why he was in the league. That Jimmy was not a great teammate, which is why I don't think that's why when the Panthers got rid of him, he didn't go anywhere else.
Right.
And I mean, we could do a whole show about, who's to blame for ruining Jimmy Clausen. But it started way before he got to Notre Dame. He played 2 games. The Bears signed him for a year. Got rid of him, and then the Ravens signed him, and he played 2 games with the Ravens, and he was done after 4 years.
With the Ravens, wow. Okay.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
He played 2 games. That's it. That's why you probably don't remember him.
He was cursed. By the time that he, committed at the College Football Hall of Fame. That was, but anyway. Here's a fun one. D-Rock says thoughts on putting Madden in on goal line or short yarded situations.
Yeah, if he's not starting.
Yeah, man.
I'd still put
That'd be fun.
I would do that. I'd put him at guard, maybe bump Brocco out to tackle and put Josh Lugg out to tight end, that kind of thing, and just power ball,
right?
Big boy football right behind him.
Tom says no way you put an undersized guard next to an undersized center equals Patterson to center ? Well,
that was something that was brought up to me earlier, but I don't think there's a difference. There's 2 types of being undersized. With Zeke Correll, his undersized is a little bit more about he just doesn't have the girth. Cain Madden has 0 lack of girth. His undersized has more to do with length and height, and that's a completely different issue. So, and look, Jarrett Patterson is not exactly all that much bigger than Zeke Correll. He's like 5 pounds bigger, and if you look at their bodies, there's not a lot of difference in their bodies. I'm not as concerned about it. Plus, the other part of it is I keep trying to tell people Notre Dame's size in the offense they run is not a problem. It's not. It's fine. Doesn't mean I want 4 290-pounders or 5 290-pounders. Right. But look, if you're Zeke Correll's always going to be undersized, but Zeke is strong. He's athletic, and he plays with great pad level. That's fine. Say, well, the best nose guards are going to blow him up. The best nose guards blow everybody up.
Right.
Zeke will be fine. Now, from a size standpoint. Now, if Zeke doesn't start, it's because other things. He's not executing. He's not running the offense, or whatever the case may be.
I like Zeke at center.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
Yeah.
AJ has a uniform question here. He says, you mentioned the mustard pants.
But wait a minute, let me interrupt you real quick.
Oh, go ahead.
To lack of size, Tommy says, according to BGI, he's 3,131 pounds. So clearly, AJ,
not a lack of size.
No lack of size there.
No lack of size.
Biggest offensive lineman in the history of the world. Sorry, Tommy, I couldn't help it. That's what you get for your anti-Virginia comments. Okay?
Yeah, that's right.
That's what happens.
You mentioned the mustard pants last week. This is something that I have been griping about a lot of people have been griping. You are not alone on that, AJ. It looks terrible. Who the heck is in charge of that, and who can call Under Armour and get it fixed?
Jack Swarbrick.
Yeah, that's exactly right. If it comes from Notre Dame that they want a different look, it'll happen. I mean, bottom line, Notre Dame is obviously the torchbearer for Under Armour from a college football standpoint. If they want something different, it will happen. So obviously they don't mind those pants. I also don't like the fact that you can see where all the sweat lines are. Like you would think that there's something that they could do about that. So I mean, I don't know. It's just not a good look. I agree. Go back to the shiny gold pants. I'm with you on that one. Let's see here.
JoJo obviously helps with depth. So hi, Coach D. Hi, JoJo. Haven't seen you post a chat in a while. So glad to have you back.
Well, he's got another one right here.
Yep.
Boom. Okay. Love the shows, and always, like everyone single show, you guys are awesome, and love your analysis and your in-depth perspective. You guys rock.
Does he have a setup too? Is there like a?
I know.
Is this next question? But you were wrong. I'm just joking with Matthew. That I think that's great.
That's awesome. Funny. Here's one that I thought was interesting. Maybe Patterson isn't as healthy as we think. So in other words,
I don't think that's it. No, okay. That's not it. Yeah. From everything I've heard, Patterson's in good position. But I mean, I like where his head's at, right? Like you're thinking outside the box and like, well, what does this mean? What does this mean for Notre Dame?
Right.
And old Grimm says, not sure I like this. Is that more about the room or his talent? I think it's a little bit of both.
Yeah.
Look, I don't think Notre Dame would bring in a kid who they thought sucked. Right, because that doesn't.
No, I don't think they would either. I
just think it's a misevaluation, and I think it's. Here's another question that was asked. Here it is from Notre Dame 2164. Am I wrong for being worried that Notre Dame might go with the Marshall transfer just because he has more experience? That's where I think this comes from.
They love experience. If we've seen anything, especially on the offensive side, they value experience over just about anything else.
Yes. Whereas on defense, we've seen more often it's, hey, this kid's too good not to play.
Right.
And so I do think there's something to that because, I mean, we've seen it before. I mean, this isn't new. I just think my whole thing is I would have rather had Dylan Gibbons. Is that wrong to say?
No, it's not wrong to say. Now he's going to be starting against Notre Dame in game 1.
But I mean, I'm a big believer. Coach the kids up that you have, unless you lack talent, unless you lack depth, unless the kid is a needle mover. And look, this kid to me is not a needle mover if he is what I think he is. But at the end of the day, look, here's the deal. At some point in time, you have to say, I think they're wrong. This is my evaluation of the kid. But now it's okay. Now we have to give them some level of benefit of the doubt.
Sure.
That they've done their homework, they've done the conversations, they think that he checks out personally. They you know what I mean? So like I've stated my opinion. I don't like it. I think that I would have gone a different way. They see something different. Let's see how it works out. And because somebody said to me on Twitter, so I was having a debate with a guy named Ryan on Twitter, and I want to read you what he said because it was a great conversation because we were just disagreeing. And at some point in time I said, hey, look, can we just agree to disagree? And he was like, absolutely. And he said, what we can agree on is that we hope it works out for the best at this point in time. And I think that's where I'm at now. Yeah. It's like, look, I've stated my opinion. I'm going to have an article at Irish Breakdown where I'm going to break down the positives and negatives after the show. I'm going to put that together. I have some feedback from Ryan Roberts, who is a NFL draft analyst that is going to start doing some more work for our site here soon, which I'm very, very excited about. But Ryan is very good. He has some stuff about Cain where, here's some good, here's some bad. And our opinion is almost the same of him. But it's at the point now we're like, look, we've said what we're going to say.
Right.
I'm going to put the article out that I'm going to put out. And, here's the pros and the cons. At this point in time, you have to hope that the staff is right.
Yes.
That's the thing.
Because he's coming.
Right. He's coming now. And you have to hope that they're right. Because, again, as we'll say again, if they are right, this is a needle-moving move.
Right.
And it does make it like a Caleb Evans because you can say, well, you're being hypocritical because you're okay with the Caleb Evans coming in and doing that. This isn't about I would turn down any guard because I want to coach up the guys that you have. No, it's you don't coach up a guy that's him. Right. Like if a guy that was of the caliber of Jarrett Patterson or somebody like that wanted to come, I'd say, great, that's okay. Because your number one goal, look, development is always important. And I've been critical of Brian Kelly for not putting enough emphasis on development. But development never takes precedence over being the best team you can be this year. Never.
Right.
It's just this specific player is not the direction I would have gone.
Yeah, I get that.
Like Caleb Evans, I'm good with because
Right.
Caleb Evans to me is a needle mover. He's a gap closer, in my opinion. I don't think this kid is, if I'm right about him. But I think we can all agree that we hope that I'm wrong. I've never rooted against myself as an opinion more ever than this one. Well,
sure.
Ian Book. That was the other one.
Well,
I hoped that I was wrong about Ian Book for 3 years.
throwing some love out to Mrs. Coach D for keeping the best ND voice rocking. Yeah. So we always got to.
She anticipated this show was going to be a little long. She got me a refill. Let me show you this, man. So my refill is here. But so she didn't have to do it again. She brought me this, so I can keep refilling the tea if the show goes long. So,
wow, you the man.
Yeah.
All right, let's see here.
Yes, I am.
Well, you're right.
I'm very lucky.
Very lucky man. Yes. Kelly back in the saddle. I would argue that the quarterback position is just a bit of a question as the O-line, which makes it hard for me to see Notre Dame as an outside competitor for the title this year. Hope I'm wrong. Kelly, you're just a little early on your comment here because we're going to talk about this next week. So I almost want to put this one on the side.
Well, and Kelly and I have had some conversations. He just isn't as high on Jack Cohn as I am.
That's fair.
And so his view of Jack Cohn is kind of like mine of Cain Madden. But at the end of the day, Kelly wants to be wrong, right? And like he said, I hope I'm wrong. That's where we're really where we come down to is I don't think quarterback's a question mark. And here's part of the reason. For me, it's not just about Jack Cohn. I think Notre Dame has 3 quarterbacks that if they run the offense the way the offense needs to be run, could be a part of this team winning the championship.
I agree.
And that's I just saw it's just more about having more faith in the talent and then those guys are able to go play. And that's where I'm at.
If it was a situation where Notre Dame had an offense where the quarterback had to be the dude, I would have a different conversation. This would be a different conversation if we're talking about the quarterback room, right? Like I feel like these guys can all run the offense.
If they had to do for the Notre Dame offense what Trevor Lawrence has to do for the Clemson offense,
correct?
Or they're being asked to be more Mac Jones than they are being asked to be Justin Fields,
correct?
Or Zach Wilson or Trevor Lawrence or those kind of guys.
I think Zach Wilson is a good comparison because he was that team, right? I mean. Yeah,
right.
No, I agree. That's where I'm at as well. So, all right, AJ claims it's the last one. We'll see. I don't know. We got to
keep bringing it, buddy. It's to quote one of my favorite movies, right? It's Friday. You ain't got no job, and you ain't got to do. So, no, this is what we're doing, buddy. So keep bringing them.
He goes, last one for me. I mean, no disrespect to Navy, but as a fan, did you enjoy last season with no Navy on the schedule as much as I did? I think that game needs to be done away once and for all.
I'm the wrong person to ask that question of.
I'm the wrong person to ask that question of too, because let me put it this way. I know your hatred for the triple option.
Yes.
So there's that. I totally get that. I have a hard time being a fan of Notre Dame and touting the tradition and all of that without respecting the tradition that they said they were going to play Navy.
I agree.
Every year. You know what I mean?
I agree. I'd never take Navy off the schedule.
I can't put those two things separate, right? Yeah. Because that's what I love about Notre Dame. And they are going to continue to play Navy because Navy saved them from not being Notre Dame anymore.
Right.
And so I'm cool with it. Okay, I'm cool with it. And I coach high school, or I coached high school football, and we see the triple option like every third week. And so I enjoy watching it because I
hate the triple option, but it has nothing to do with whether or not Notre Dame should or shouldn't play Navy.
Right. You
Notre
can
Dame should absolutely
those two. Yes.
Look, and to me, the other reason to me is also on Memorial Day here, I tweeted this out. I'm the grandson of a World War II veteran who fought the Battle of the Bulge. I was actually cleaning out my emails the other day, and I came across when he passed away, I had one of the biggest honors of my life as I was asked to give the eulogy at my grandfather's funeral. And I found the speech that I gave, but then I also found his World War II record, his discharge papers. And he fought in Ardennes, just kind of supported, and he never liked to talk about it. But I'm also the nephew of someone who was in the Marine Corps in the 70s, right? I'm the cousin of someone who's done at least 3 or 4 tours in Afghanistan and Iraq. I'm the brother-in-law of someone who, fought in the Iraq War. and I'm from, I grew up in my formative older years in Norfolk, Virginia. My parents used to go to the carriers when the carriers would dock in and just be there to welcome the soldiers. Like, I'm a very, we can sit here today because of the sacrifices they make. And not only is that big picture thing, but you also look at the fact that the Navy stepped up to the plate to help Notre Dame exist.
Yep.
Notre Dame doesn't exist today as it is if it's not for Navy. That debt never gets repaid. Right?
Exactly.
If someone saves my life, that debt doesn't have a life. Hey, look, man, it's been 5 years since you kept me alive. All right. Okay. That debt's been for every day that I'm living and breathing, that debt is still there.
Right.
Yes. And that's how I view the Navy thing. Plus, they're dirty at times and I hate the triple option, but still, I mean, that to me is one. Now, I think Notre Dame can be smarter about when they play Navy.
That's fair. No, that's fair.
That to me, but I also am sympathetic to why people think that they should not be on the schedule.
And I get that.
For me, it just they're never coming off.
Got a quick super chat here from Lucas. Just the super chat, baby.
Appreciate
no comments.
That one very much.
Lucas, you the man, and we really appreciate it, man. It's you guys are bringing it today, and I'm having a blast to be honest with you.
When you don't have to get off, it's been an hour and 40 minutes already, and you don't have to leave after an hour. So that's the difference.
That's crazy. It doesn't feel like it's been that long. Now I got to find where I
got you. So Liam Gaming says, "What's the floor for the O-line? 2019 play better or worse?" I think the floor is actually worse than the 2019 line because number one. Well, part of it depends on, let's assume that Cain Madden is starting. Until he proves otherwise, I don't think the overall talent level is as good in 2019. Yeah, I mean, it's still not as experienced as the other group was. I mean, because in 2019, you had Liam Eichenberg had a full year starting under his belt. Robert Hainsey had 2 years of starting under his belt. Tommy Kramer had 2 years of starting under his belt. Aaron Banks had started like 7 or 8 games, like the last 6 or 7 games of the 2018 season. She had a lot more talent in that group and a lot more experience across the board in that group. I think it's the floor is a little lower than 2019 in my opinion. I'd say even lower than 2018. But I think the ceiling is high because because you have a potential star at left tackle. I'm hesitant to put too much hype on Blake Fisher because I feel like then you start setting unfair expectations for a true freshman no matter how good he is.
Yeah.
But he's very talented.
He's good.
Josh Lugg, if he can be the guy that I hope he can be, if Jarrett Patterson, but it all boils down to if Cain Madden is as good as Notre Dame and other people say that he is, and his accolades say that he is, then the floor to me is higher than what I think.
It's going to be. I'll leave it at that because that was a really good explanation. I'm still trying to process the grad transfer. Like when I watched the film yesterday, I was like, this is a hype. It's not going to happen. And now he's committed. So I'm still wrapping my mind around all of that. Some comments about the Navy game in here. Brian, AJ, for as much as I love the game and respect, I cringe because someone always gets injured. Has that been the case the last few years? I don't remember anybody getting injured the last few years. I feel like they've done a better job of that the last few. But JoJo,
some of the injuries that we've seen have been kind of noticeable. Lewis Nick's really struggling to get up off the ground. Yeah, I think it was 2013, and then obviously Joe Schmidt had that bad injury. But there was a time where Navy was a lot dirtier than they are now.
That's fair.
And I think that's what turned a lot of people off because Navy. There was a period in the early 2010s, early in Kelly's tenure, for about 4 or 5 years. I thought Navy was a really dirty program, which that was the first time in my career I was like, if they're going to play that way, then I understand taking them off the schedule.
Yeah, right.
That hasn't necessarily been the case the last few years.
Right. JJ says, I'm hoping it pans out. I would like, if possible, the freshmen to watch and learn on the O-line and play during mop-up duty and get some experience.
I just got reminded that Jason Adamiola got injured 2 years ago against Navy.
Oh, well, there you go.
I just got a text about that.
Okay. See, my memory's terrible. I blame the children. AJ says, I cringe every time the term mutual respect gets mentioned in regards to the game. Okay, I get that. Christopher
it's a great
Sally.
question.
This is a really good question. How much can he realistically improve his body and athleticism in 2 to 3 months? Not a ton, but there's a lot of
from the pictures I've seen. There can be a decent amount.
He's just stumpy. What did we say? I mean, I don't know.
But if you see pictures of him from the summer, he's got. Look, it's like this, Christopher. Imagine if you went like on a Biggest Loser 3-month thing where like they just took you to this weight place and all you were doing for 3 months was being given certain meals and just working out with world-class strength conditioning people.
I would not.
You could do some. Now. You could, yes. Yeah. Now, is it going to be like this total transformation where all of a sudden he looks like Liam Eichenberg? No. That's never going to happen.
No.
But you can see enough to where but again, the bigger thing for me is not the reshaping of the body. That will happen.
Yeah.
It's the technique part's got to be the thing that comes with it. And so, I do. Plus, here's the other thing you got to think about. Cain has told, I think it was Tom Loy had done some update where he talked about like the kid wants to improve his draft stock. So he's motivated to put in the work. That's the other thing. And so, look, there can be significant changes in 3 months, not as much as you'd see from, over a 3-year period, but there can be a jump because he's starting from far. I mean, he's starting from basically a MAC level school. Marshall was in the MAC a couple of years ago, weren't they?
Right.
A few years ago.
Yeah.
There was a time that they were in the MAC. They've kind of moved all over.
And there was a time when they were
USA now.
Division 2 or 3. I mean,
one AA.
Yeah,
they were monsters.
Yes, they were.
They had Chad Pennington and Randy Moss on a 1AA
team. I know, right? And then Byron Leftwich kind of picked up where he was. I mean,
I think Byron was there when they were D1.
Yeah. Okay.
So, because I think Randy's last year, so the year that Marshall won the title when Randy was a sophomore, Moss was a sophomore, that was the last year of FCS.
Okay.
The next year, they went D1, which is why Pennington and Randy Moss were Heisman contenders.
Makes sense. Gotcha.
And then Byron Leftwich came after Chad Pennington.
10-4. All right, we got another super chat, man. They're rolling in. Dylan Riggins, thank you, sir. He says, hit the like button for the best content around. The more I learn about you guys, the more I love being a part of it. And that is the key word right there. You guys are all a part of it, and that's what makes it fun and special and fun.
I mean, that's what this stuff's all about, right?
Yeah.
It's about – it's a sense of community. It's like we're part of the same team. Yes, Vince and I are the on-air part of it. But, look, if you guys – we're an hour and 47 in, and it doesn't feel like it. Our numbers are as high now as they've been the entire show.
I know, it's great.
Right? That's not because of us, right? Like, I mean, we're providing content, but I'm doing something different right now if y'all weren't here. I mean, that's the reality of it.
Yeah,
so it's very much appreciated.
I'd be sitting at a garage sale.
Honestly, our numbers in May, we had our best month by almost 20,000 downloads on our podcast. And the podcast is essentially taking this video and putting it in
audio form,
right? We had our best month on YouTube that we've had so far. And to have that kind of jump during a May when there's no visits, there's
nothing.
I mean, there's the spring game on the 1st. It's because people are because of y'all. And so it's
thank you.
It's greatly appreciated. Now, if we can just get the website to get back on track, that'd be even better.
I know, right? Jojo, he's commenting on a conversation we were having back when he posted this at 1:34. He goes, I'm afraid like you, Vince, and Coach D say, how is this going to affect your other guys who got recruited waiting for your turn? Pow, a grand transfer takes your playing time and your spot. I think, and we talked about this obviously a little bit ago, but again, if it is a not legit reason, like if they're not as good and they're taking your spot, huge problem. But if they're going to bring a guy in that's going to make the team better, then I think guys understand that to a degree. Like, you know what I mean? Like if it's a guy that's legitimately better, then it is what it is, right? But if they're bringing in a guy just because they don't believe in you and all of that, that can destroy a room very, very quickly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree.
So the big dog Sean says, if Cain's film is that bad, how is he an All-American?
Okay, so understand that he's a very good player at that level. He dominated at that level.
Correct.
Right? I mean, that's what we're saying. We're projecting what that would look like at Notre Dame. So let me ask you this question. Do you think Tommy Kramer would have dominated if he'd have played at that level? Obviously, right? What would Dylan Gibbons' career look like if he would have gone to Marshall instead of Notre Dame? You get what I'm saying? So it's about projecting what he can do at a place like Notre Dame. And that's where I'm coming from. And so, yes, being All-American is great, but I don't care much about that. I'm sorry. I just don't. I don't care about All-American honors because that All-American honor was achieved against – let me tell you their schedule last year, okay? This is who Marshall played last year. They played Eastern Kentucky, Appalachian State, Western Kentucky, Louisiana Tech, Florida Atlantic, UMass, Middle Tennessee State. And then in their last 3 games against Rice, UAB, and Buffalo, they combined for 23 points in those 3 games. Ooh. I don't care about what a guy does against that competition. I care about, it's the same thing I do with high school film.
Yep.
I care about what does that film show me in regards to projecting to Notre Dame, right? And that's what I'm saying is there's some things that I really like. He was a very effective player at Marshall. But just because you're effective at Marshall doesn't mean you're then going to go and be effective at Notre Dame. And that's the issue.
Sure.
And so, again, Sean, I hope we're wrong. I would love to be wrong.
Right.
But look, here's the options that I have. 1, I can give you my honest opinion. 2, I can just be a homer and tell you what you want to hear. And I'm not talking about you, Sean. I'm saying in general. And say everything is awesome and everything is great. The other part about it is, it's easy to jump on, hey, second team All-American, jump on the bandwagon, right?
Right.
But that would be dishonest. That would be telling you that something I don't truly believe. I'm going to tell you what I believe. Sometimes I hope what I believe is correct. I hope I'm right. And I think you would agree. Everybody hopes that I'm right about Jack Cohn. Everybody hopes that we're right about the receivers. We hope that they're right about Cain Madden.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
But I'm not infallible. My whole thing is the coaches aren't infallible. They make mistakes. And so my job is not just trust what they say or do. It's to give you my honest opinion. I'm also not infallible. I'm going to make mistakes. Right. And so, but what you can always be assured of is even if I'm right or I'm wrong, you're always going to get my honest opinion.
Yep.
Okay. And I'm not going to go off accolades in a piece of paper. People aren't giving us super chats. People aren't giving us money. People aren't spending their time watching our shows because I'm looking at a piece of paper saying All-American. Oh, sure. Because anyone can do that.
What service made him an All-American? Because isn't there multiple All-American?
I think it was Associated Press. I'm going to have to look at it.
Okay.
Associated
I didn't mean
Press
to put you on the
was
spot.
one. No, it's okay. The Athletic was one. And I think it was, I'm going to pull up, I think it was Associated Press or USA Today, one of those two. Let me look it up here.
So it wasn't like unanimous second team.
No. But I mean, still, I don't care if you're just on one. I mean, that's impressive.
I'm just getting it out there.
Yeah, he was a Walter Camp second team All-American, and he was also an All-American from the Athletic.
Okay. All right. I was just curious.
Yeah. And I don't know what the criteria those places use. Are they watching film? And that's the other thing you have to ask yourself. How many people do you think pick those lists are watching film?
That was going to be my next.
I don't know the answer to that.
I don't either.
What I'm saying is look, I can only go off what I see. I broke down 3 full game films of him, and I see a kid that's a really good Conference USA player. I don't see a kid that projects to Notre Dame the way that people think he will. But at the end of the day, as I said, and I'll keep saying it, I hope I'm wrong, but I'm not going to lie to y'all and say that he's something that I just don't see.
All right. Mason says, I have a gut feeling that Carnell Tate is going to end up at Ohio State. If this happens, is it reasonable to question Dell's ability to land national recruits at the wide receiver position? I think that's very reasonable.
Yeah. Yeah. Can I go back to that previous thing too? When I made the comment that I'm always going to tell you what I think, I'm not claiming that other people lie to you. I just want to make sure people.
Right. Oh, yeah.
If somebody is let's just say someone from another Notre Dame place is saying this is a great pickup and this is a great player. I'm not saying they're lying to you. They may genuinely believe that.
They believe that.
I'm just saying I am not going to lie to you based on what I see. If what I see tells me this, I'm going to tell you this. So I hope that it doesn't come across as I'm saying other people are lying to you. I don't know if they are or aren't. I don't assume that they are, but that's just what I see.
John says, every time Brian says, sick 'em, get the ball, I go straight to the Hackman and Favreau in the replacements. That is a awesome, terrible movie.
Just the awkwardness at the end of that scene is like, okay, so you can go to the bench now, Danny. So, and that movie brings back bad memories for me too. So can I tell you why that movie brings back bad memories? So that was filmed in Raven Stadium.
Yes,
and it was filmed the year before my redshirt sophomore year of college. And I was the starting quarterback of Salisbury. We played our rival in that stadium the year after, and they had completely destroyed the field. Completely, it was so slick. Like my first time I dropped back on pregame, I almost did the splits because the ground was just so bad that I just almost did.
They never replaced the turf. They just let it get destroyed.
They might have replaced the turf, but it was like whatever the replacement it didn't work, and it was because they had done all that. And yeah, now I have some good memories of the game, but that turf was bad. We ended up losing, but
how cool is it to play in an NFL stadium?
Yeah,
that's pretty.
That was pretty cool. Yeah, I mean, and so the last drive we went up. I'm trying to remember what the score was. We went up. And then they went down and scored a touchdowns with a couple minutes left because we jumped off sides. Our defense jumped off sides. So I got the ball back, a few minutes left. We marched right down the field. We got in field goal range. And my roommate, who was the kicker, it's like 35-yard field goal, game-winning field goal. And it landed in the left corner of the end zone.
Oh, that's not even just a miss.
It wasn't close.
That's not even a miss. That's
it never
in was.
The corner of the end zone. I mean, it was bad. It was bad. Yeah,
that's
it was
so bad. That's so bad. I got to tell I have a kicker in the house. I'm going to have to give him that story. I think he'll enjoy that one.
Yeah, it was pretty bad. But, we didn't speak for about a week after that. At least a week after that. Yeah.
That's fantastic.
I was pissed. Oh, yeah, I do all this work to get us down in the and I had thrown right before I'd thrown an in cut, 25-yard in cut between two defenders and
feeling really good about the situation.
I gotta see, it was our rival. They were pretty good that year. We stunk. I think we won 2 games that year. One of them was I threw a TD, a 30-some-yard TD pass with 50 seconds left to come back and win that one. And it's just we weren't very good. So we're gonna end the season with a big win over our rival.
Oh my God, the left corner of the inside. I'm sorry. All right.
I'm not exaggerating.
I know you're not. I know you're not. That's the best part.
It was horrible.
Jojo, hey guys, how about Winston versus Colville versus Pope? Who do you like? Please, Bradshaw, Merriweather, and CJ Williams or Anderson. Do you like Mac Markway?
Mac Markway, yep.
Yes, Mac Markway. Tay 23 or tight end.
It's tight end 23.
Yeah. Okay, got it. Or another tight end you prefer in the class. Sorry, Jojo, I butchered that whole thing. I apologize.
Let's see here. So the safety one. I like of those three, my favorite's Sherrod Colville. And I'm trying to remove my Virginia bias out of this as much as possible. I just think that kid is a flipping missile.
Yeah.
I mean, you watch him play, he's like doing to dudes stuff that Sean Taylor used to do to guys.
Yeah.
It's just he just crushes guys. He's very athletic, very instinctive, smart kid. I really like Sherrod Colville a lot. Between those two, I think Jake Pope's a better safety today. I think KJ Winston has a higher ceiling. If you can get Colville, that would be to me a big pickup. If you get Colville and one of those other two guys, I don't care which one it is, that's a really darn good safety
great
class.
Safety haul, yeah.
I feel good about that. A receiver, to me, Tobias Merriweather is my top guy. After that, the dream class for me is Xavion Bradshaw and CJ Williams. You get those three guys with the Maureen Walker, that's a home run receiver class. If Nick Anderson's part of the receiver class and you get one of CJ or Tobias, that's a good receiver class, but it comes up short relative to are you moving the needle? Because you had one needle mover in that group, one gap closer. The rest are just kind of what you've been doing.
Gap closer.
And but Tobias Merriweather, Tobias ran a 10.9 recently at a track meet. Now, for a 6'4" kid as a junior, and he ran the 100, the 200, and the 400 at that track meet. That's moving. That's why I said his speed on film is deceptive because he's a long strider. But I'm telling you, that kid's vertical speed, that kid's second gear is really impressive. And that's why I'm so high on him. I mean, he's really good. If you get Tobias Merriweather, I'm not going to crush you for your receiving class because you got a stud, but I'm still going to be critical of what comes after that.
Sure.
But if what comes after that is CJ Williams and Xavion Bradshaw, I won't have a bad word to say about the offensive coaching staff when it comes to recruiting. That would be a grand slam home run wide receiver class, in my opinion.
And tight end?
Mac Markway is a good football player. Here's the thing about it, right? So Mac Markway is probably one of the 4 or 5 best tight ends I've seen in the 2023 class. And it's a good year at tight end. The issue I have, and he's from DeSmet Jesuit in St. Louis, same high school as Jordan Johnson, DJ Horde near Prince, Patty Mullen, right? So Notre Dame's had some success there. But he's a throwback. He's Brock Wright, right? That's fine. Brock's a good – look, if it wasn't for Notre Dame having so many other good tight ends, Brock Wright would have been a really good tight end in Notre Dame.
Yes, agreed.
So that's not a criticism. That's a style of play comparison. It's a comparison of how he plays the game. He's a throwback tight end. I don't think Notre Dame needs that, and I think Notre Dame has enough of those guys already on the roster right now.
Sure.
To me, because you signed 2 tight ends in 3 straight classes, you had Bauman and Mayer, you had Barong and Evans, and you now have Raridan and Stace. You should be shooting for the moon. And to me, the moon is Jackson Howard and Deuce Robinson right now. That is the moon. Now, Jackson Howard's probably a little ahead of Deuce right now, but Deuce Robinson, for me, he's from the same high school as Tosh Baker. He has the highest ceiling of any tight end I've seen so far. And that's where I'm coming from, is that's the guy that I would be shooting for them, because you don't need to get a tight end right now. You shoot for the best guy, and if it takes you all the way to next signing year, then that's fine, because you're going to be loaded at tight end for years to go. I mean, Notre Dame could conceivably pass on tight end in this 2023 class, and I'd say, okay, yeah, I get that. Numbers-wise, now I wouldn't pass on it because it's such a great tight end class. But it gives you – the point is, it gives you the freedom to shoot for the moon.
Yep.
Because you're not hurting if you don't get a guy. But if you're going to get a guy, he better darn well be better than the guys you already have, because what you already have is really impressive.
Yep.
And that's why, again, I say Deuce Robinson and Jackson Howard are so far. And there's still 5 or 6 tight ends that they're on that I need to watch. But I've seen about 10, 12 tight ends so far. And those 2 guys, to me, are the best that I've seen.
Hey, Lucas hitting us up with another super chat. Thanks, Lucas. We appreciate it. He's got a great comment. I can see Davis having a better season than Austin, even when he's healthy. I think Avery's versatility will be more effective in this offense. Look, you can go back to our podcast from yesterday. We talked about the wide receiver group. And look, Brian and I are the president and vice president of the Avery Davis fan club, okay? We are big fans of what he brings to the table, and I think Brian said it yesterday. One of the most underrated players in the country, and people are going to be hearing Avery Davis's name.
Who's the president? Who's the vice president?
I'll give it to you. You can have the responsibility.
All right, good answer.
You can have the responsibility for that.
Good answer.
I'll just, in case you get assassinated, I'll step in. But
well, you just took it. Like, here's the line. You just kind of like pole vault. Everything Vince said is true about Avery Davis. Having said that, if Kevin Austin is healthy, he'll have the bigger impact because of the position he plays.
Yeah,
that position in this offense, no matter the old way they did it, the way that they're transitioning to it, that guy is that is the more defense altering position, in my opinion. Yeah, and Avery can be used in a lot of different ways, and I think Avery could have a very productive season. And I love Avery Davis, but if Kevin Austin is healthy and the player that we think he can be, he's your best receiver. And then you add the fact that playing that W, that's the volume position. He would be their best receiver, in my opinion. But I think a case could be made, however, that Avery could be even more challenging to defend if you use him correctly, because you don't know where he's going to be half the time.
Sure.
And so that's where I think where Lucas could really have a leg to stand on is, Kevin may be more productive, but he didn't say I can see Davis having a more productive season than Austin. He said a better season, and that's where I think you could kind of get into who's better, the guy that put up more numbers, or did this other guy maybe didn't put up more numbers, but he had a greater influence on the defense. That's going to be something that would be interesting to see.
Fair enough. Shannon is jumping in here with some pizza talk. I don't know. Did you mention pizza?
Yes, Politos, man. I always talk about Polito.
I know you love.
I'm hungry now. I'm gonna text my wife. I'm not having chili for dinner tonight.
And Shannon says that Chivo's is excellent on the west side. And let me just tell you, Chivo's is amazing. The owner of Chivo's is a Riley grad where I coach baseball, and he's donated to our program both monetarily and with the pies. And it is a big time fan of Chivo's.
What kind of pizza is it?
It's not anything in particular. It's just it's just homemade, really good pizza, man. Big fan. And so Chivo's is right up there with me. I do. Why am I drawing a blank?
I'm not a huge fan of Tony Sacco's, to be honest with you. Number one,
I have never been there.
Yeah,
so
it's over by Heritage Square.
Yeah, yep, I know where it's at.
I don't like it. Plus, when we had a townhouse at Williamsburg at the lake here in Mishawaka.
Yep.
And our next door neighbor worked there, and it was like, yeah, I'm never eating there. I'm never gonna eat there. That's all I'm gonna say. I doubt he still works there, but
Barnaby's is really, really good.
I'm not a big fan of Barnaby's, but see, I'm also a New York style guy. I either like that or like there's a style of pie that you can get in Ohio, like at Fat Jack's in Lima, where I'm from, that's different that I really like. Yeah. But I've never tried Chivo's. I'm gonna have to talk to Angela about maybe getting some pie from there one of these days.
And I will say Bruno's is all. I know you're not a huge fan, but I do enjoy.
That's just now. I'll tell you what I like about Bruno's. They put a lot of cheese on their pizza.
They do,
and that's what I like. I do like
cheesy
that.
And doughy, and I do like the doughy.
Yeah.
Anyway, speaking of pizza, says Tommy Brian. Next time you're in my area, we'll have to get you to Krause's. So
okay,
I guess put that on the list. Mason,
the problem is he's in Ohio, and I don't like to go to Ohio. I'm just joking. I was just in Ohio. I'm just kidding.
Yes, you were. We were talking about Steve Angeli earlier. He says, I feel like Steve Angeli is the most prototypical Notre Dame quarterback of all time.
I'd be curious what he means by that.
Yeah. So
yeah. Can you follow up with that, Mason? I'd really like to hear what you mean by that. Because that could be an interesting take. Just depends on what he means by that.
Talking stadiums here, in the swamp, football is an incidental footnote after advertising. It's just gross. I love that Notre Dame Stadium has preserved some classic purity, which was not compromised by the scoreboard or the turf. And I agree.
100% agree.
I agree.
100% agree.
Yep.
I mean, that's the thing is like you can do it the right way.
Yep.
And Notre Dame so far has done it the right way.
They have,
and they'll put like ads like on the jumbotron, like to play at times, you know. But I don't even know if they do that very often.
It's not really. They don't have.
It's usually
ads
like school stuff.
It's
and
all
like,
school stuff.
Yeah, I mean, yes, 100% right. I think Joe's point is spot on. Like it's like I'm seeing all these Major League Baseball stadiums now that have like ads on their walls. I think that's gross.
Yeah. And they really upped it with COVID because they didn't have fans, and so they put those tarps.
I mean,
like,
I
over the
get
seats.
that. I mean, I kind of get that, but like,
well, they needed to make money, and I get that.
Like teams that put like sponsors on their uniforms.
Yeah, I saw that. I'm not digging that either. No, but if you'd like to sponsor Riley Baseball, I will put an IB on every one of them.
That's different. You're not a $1 billion industry. You can sell yourself out to bidders because you need to. You know, you gotta do that.
We need to buy dirt for the field.
Notre Dame shouldn't do that. And I think Joe's point is spot on. And this was the whole argument beforehand is how are they going to do it? You know, can you preserve the tradition but still be modern? And so far, I think Notre Dame's done a great job with it.
Yeah, and it says, love your end zone idea, nicer for TV without spoiling the vibe. But before we get rid of the diagonal lines, here's a trivia question Lou would know. Let's see if you do. How many stripes and what angle? It's at a 42-degree angle, I do believe. And I believe, is it point at the Golden Dome? There's something additional to that, but I'm pretty sure it's a 42-degree because the university was founded in 1842. I do know that. And as far as the number, I'm sure there's something there about that.
1842. There's 9 in
each.
Is it
18 stripes and then 40? Okay. All right.
1842.
So I was right. Kind of.
You were right.
All right. So that's really cool. We got another super
chat.
Brian.
I did look that up just to be sure.
Okay.
And here's the thing. The only reason I thought I knew the answer is because of Lou. Because Lou has talked about it before.
Right. Exactly.
Otherwise, I'd have been like, I don't know. Did Newt Rockne like stripes or something? I don't know what the heck it was. I mean, like, was stripes the cool thing back in 1930 or something? Like, I had no idea. And then Lou explained to me. I was like, oh, that's actually pretty cool. So it doesn't face the Golden Dome. It's the angle 1840. Yeah. So
gotcha.
Anyway, it does point towards the Golden Dome, but I don't think that was the purpose. Okay. There's only one side does. The other side.
And John says it's 9 stripes.
Yeah. Because it's 9 and then 18.
9 and 9
right.
is
9 and 9, 18. Yeah. 1842.
Yeah. And you know what? I like little things like that actually mean something. But John hooking us up with the super chat. He says he's working today, but he'll watch when he gets home. Go
now,
Irish.
that's what I'm talking about. He's not even in the chat.
He's throwing it out
leaving,
there, man.
leaving super chats. John is my man. That's what I mean. But see, again, like that's awesome, and that helps us. But like, that's what I love about this. This is like a family, right? Like, 100%. We get into the chat, and dudes have been talking for like an hour, right? It's like we got to scroll for 10 minutes to find a question because they're talking. I love it. I think it's awesome. I think it's awesome.
He wants to know what the expectations are for Lawrence Keys in this season statistically.
You know, to me, that's what I would say that if he plays if he plays the amount I think he's going to play, which is some slot, some in the outside, I could see him being over 40 catches this year. Because I think the unique thing about Lawrence is Lawrence can catch the ball screen, quick, intermediate, and deep because of the things he does. And so I think if they move him around as much as I think they will, honestly, John, I think that you could see him top 40 catches this year, which I think could ultimately lead the receivers in catches. I think if I had to make a prediction today and I had to put money on it, I'd probably go with Avery Davis because I think he's going to play the most. And he's the guy that I'm most confident is going to, get a lot of snaps and step up and play. But I could see Kevin Austin being that guy if he's healthy. I could see Lawrence being that guy if they move him around a lot. Mm-hmm. So certainly I could see any of those guys being the leading receiver amongst the wideouts.
Right.
But I think they're going to spread the ball. I don't think there's going to be one guy that dominates the stats like Chase Claypool did a couple years ago.
Yep.
Where if you look at 2019 stats, Vince, I mean, it was Chase, Cole, and then like huge drop off of what next. I mean, Chris Fink had a down year that year, but you had 66 catches from Chase, 43 from Cole, 41 from Fink, and then after that it was 11, 11, 16, 13, 10, 15, 13. I think you're going to see a lot more 40, 30, 30, 20, 20, 20, and that's why I've used Ohio State as a comparison. And because I think Ohio State in some of these years when they didn't have an alpha, they spread the ball around like crazy. I mean, if you look at 2019, they had 49, 57, 34, 30, 27, 23. The year before that, Paris Campbell had a ton of catches and KJ Hill 90 and 68. But then he had 35, 42, 21, 26, 26, 20, and 21. That was a team that also threw a mess of passes.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
But the point is they spread the ball around a lot. I mean, that team threw a ton. They threw 561 passes that year. I do not see Notre Dame throwing 561 passes this year. The year before that, 40, 56, 29, 18, 23, 24, 28, 17, 22. So that's kind of how I think we're going to see it this year is there's a lot of guys making catches, a lot of guys 20 and more, as opposed to a Michael like Floyd
45,
100
50,
catches from 20.
Yeah.
So that's what I think we'll see. I think the only guy, the guy that has the best chance of really blowing up catches wise is Michael Mayer, but I think defenses are going to try to do a lot early to keep him. His numbers, I think, are going to be better in the middle end of the year as other players start to produce. I think early on teams are going to say, we're not going to let that guy catch it. But here's the question, Vince. You may want to stop Michael Mayer, but can you?
Can you? Yeah, exactly.
That's
You're
another
match
question.
Him up with a defensive end, size-wise. Exactly.
Yeah, well, we had a game plan to stop Michael Mayer, but then we realized none of our dudes are as good as Michael Mayer.
Right.
So
we got another super chat, Brian. Got to throw it up. CW.
That's my 757 guy.
Yeah, he's pretty pumped about Virginia.
I went to Kempsville my first 2 years of high school. So I can tell you a funny story. Yeah, so here's a funny story. So I went to Kempsville, and we were handoff left and right team, right? And I came home from we were like first week of fall camp as a junior. I came home from practice, and there was a dude sitting on my couch talking to my parents. I was like, "Who's this guy?" He was an AD from a private school, and he's like, "We need a quarterback." And I was like, "How much do you guys throw?" We'll throw at least 20 times a game. Done.
I'm there. Where do I sign?
Yeah. So I mean, it was a little bit more complex than that, but that was basically the gist of it. So. Yeah, so all these people say recruiting doesn't happen there. Yeah, it does. Yeah, it does. Yes, I can assure you it does.
Our guy, Old Grim, jumping in. Man, the super chats are out of control today.
I love you guys today. So I mean, we love you not just because you're giving us super chats. I mean, that's obviously we appreciate that. But when Vince says this is the best part of the week, it really is.
It is. There's no. Now I don't know if I'm going to be able to stick around till 5, and that's about how many questions we got going right now. Hey, did you know? And I've never really kept up with this. We can only see so many.
You comments. Can't go all the way back in the top. We had that problem yesterday, so
it's cutting us off.
Yeah, so that was actually going to be something you and I were going to talk about this week. Because like when we do the shows where we're not answering questions right away, we miss some.
Yeah.
So I was going to kind of, when we do some of those, is like maybe we'll talk about it later. But
Okay.
we'll figure out an answer to make sure that we can get those up there.
Caleb, and it's a response to Thomas has a response to Caleb's question, and he basically said,
let's put up Caleb's comment first.
Well, I don't think we've
gone. Well, I have it. This one.
Oh,
am I the only one who thinks Cain Madden pickup was not the best? He is a rotation player at best. Everyone on IG has been trying to say he is starting day one. I mean, that's kind of where I'm at. That's kind of where I'm at. And then Thomas agreed with him.
Yeah,
I agree with you. But why would a kid with 1 year left commit if he wasn't sure he was going to start? I agree with that. I don't like the pickup, but hope he is damn good because he's starting. I agree.
Yeah. Yep. And
Jonathan said. Hold on.
Sorry.
John said Pro Football Focus had Cain Madden ranked number 1 in the country for run blocking last year. Again, what we have to understand about Pro Football Focus, that is relative to the teams that they play. They also had Cain Madden ranked higher than any Notre Dame offensive lineman. And all I'm going to ask is to watch the 3 games that I sent you. And you can look, all of his games are on YouTube. You can watch all of his games. You tell me if you think he starts at Notre Dame last year. Not would he be their best player if he starts at Notre Dame last year. Pro Football Focus also does not have Michael Mayer and Kyron Williams among their 10 best returning players at those positions. So I think I've made my opinion of Pro Football Focus a whole lot lately. So
I want to know how you can see all these comments and I can't anymore.
I don't know. Brady Urista says, what are your thoughts on the Caleb Evans and Notre Dame's chance of getting him to come Notre Dame? Brady, I think that Notre Dame has a very good chance. It's not a done deal yet at all. I don't even know.
Missouri right now.
He's at Missouri now. Texas is putting in a hard push. I think Notre Dame did a great job. If they don't get him, I can honestly say, and I don't always say this, I can honestly say if he goes somewhere else that there is nothing Notre Dame could have done differently on that one. I mean, they have done as good of a job as you can possibly do at trying to get him. It's just about now. It's about what does he want to do? Because look, he's got his degree, right? So now it's about positioning yourself to play at the next level, and there's a lot that goes into that. You know, there's family concerns that go into that.
Sure.
You know, there's all types of things that go into that, and that Notre Dame can't control. But I think Notre Dame did as good of a job as they could have, and now it's just about what Caleb wants to do, and I think he's an outstanding player. I think he's not just a Power 5 caliber player. He's a guy that's played against a lot of Power 5 schools and played very well. I mean, Texas, 2 games against Oklahoma State, Mississippi State.
Yeah.
He's played against a lot of Power 5 schools, and he has played very well in each of those games. And he comes from a league that throws the ball a ton. And that's the other thing. I mean, you think SMU, Houston, Memphis, there's a lot of teams in that league that throw the ball a ton. So he's not coming from a league where it's like a bunch of triple option teams, right? There's just the one, right? But everybody else throws the ball a ton in that league.
Brian has a shirt idea for you, a shirt with an eraser with the word Gap on it.
Yes, I dig that. My wife is going to get right on that one.
Yeah, right. To get the big old, like the pink erasers that we used to use like back in the day. Like, anyway,
that'd be good.
Benjamin, can you guys give a starting 5 offensive line prediction, assuming all players are healthy? Now, there's 2 ways to answer this, Brian. There's the one that we think will happen, and one that we think should happen. And I think those are 2 different answers.
Well, and then what I hope happens.
Yeah, well, there you go.
I kind of got 4 answers. So number 1, I mean,
4 answers.
Yeah. Okay. So here's number 1, which is one you said we think is going to happen. So that's going to be Patterson and Madden at guard, Fisher and Lugg at tackle, and then Zeke Correll at center.
Yep, that's 100%. Yes.
Right, and then the one that we probably think there's another option I could see in that scenario. I could also see one. This is number 2 where Madden starts, but it's a rotation with Rocco Spindler. I could see that. I could definitely see that.
It's like one.
The other one is right. The other one is that probably really 3 because the other one's kind of a stretch. But the other one is that both Rocco and this is the one I hope Rocco and Kristovic both beat him out, and that there's a rotation at guard. That I guess there's 4 that they do give those guys a chance. They beat him out because that means they're really good. That's what that means. Not a knock on Cain. If those 2 guys beat him out and they're in a rotation or one of them completely takes over, that means they're really good, right? My 4th scenario, which is sort of the dream scenario, I guess there's 5. My 4th scenario is that Cain Madden is everything that Notre Dame and all these people clamoring about as second-team All-American. He is what they think he is, which would be awesome. And then my fifth scenario is Tosh Baker has this blow up fall camp, and maybe you can move Josh Lugg to guard and then that kind of thing. But that's a little bit of a different scenario. But yeah, I think the most realistic is the second one, which is Cain and Rocco both play. I think that's the more realistic starting lineup. I just don't see them, and maybe all these good things that they've done as a staff this summer have just kind of made me more optimistic, but I just don't see them not playing Rocco. I don't. And there you go. Great minds.
Yep.
That's what I hope happens. And that's what I think is
very realistic. I think that's very realistic. I really do.
I do. And if that's happening because Rocco's so good, not because Cain is not as good, then that's even better. Right? I think, that's the thing.
Jordan wants to know, and this is directed right at you because I don't talk to recruits. He says, do you ever give advice to recruits? Can you steer a Notre Dame target towards a freshman development plan before committing? This could fix the development problem, especially at receiver.
No. I don't ever. The only time I've ever given advice to recruits is they would ask me my opinion, and I'd say, hey, here's who you need to talk to get that question answered. I don't. And that was hard for me when I first started doing this job because I'm a coach. I was in my recruiting mode, which was giving advice to players. And so I have definitely don't do that. Look, I don't get paid to steer kids to Notre Dame. Notre Dame's coaches do. And if you ask anyone that's worked for me, one of the things to say is if I hear of you basically recruiting for Notre Dame or saying negative things about another program, you're done.
Yeah.
There's no warning. You're done. That's not professional. Your job is to tell a story. Our job is to give you news and information and tell a story. When you're texting with a kid, when you're DMing with a kid, when you're talking to a parent, all that kind of stuff, your job is to tell the story. Get the news, get the information, and put it out there. We are not recruiters for Notre Dame, all those kind of things. And that's just the way it has to be. I mean, you start getting into that, and then there's ethical concerns, there's other issues, legal concerns, and all that type of stuff. It's not worth it. Now, does that mean that we don't then maybe if we get information about something that we may not pass that along so that other people that get paid to do it may know, hey, you may want to talk to this kid about this based on what we're talking about? Sure, that happens. But any advice I've ever given to a kid was broad in nature. Yeah. It'd be something like, look, you need to figure out what's important to you. And I used to do this when I was younger. I don't do this at all anymore. You need to figure out the things that are important to you, and essentially that needs to be your decision. It was never anything specific. And like I said, I don't do that anymore. I don't allow the people that cover recruits to work for me anymore to do that. And that's why I've always said, you do not have to be a Notre Dame fan to work for me. And in some instances, it's actually better. Because when you hire people that are Notre Dame fans to cover recruiting, it's always like, oh, God, because I don't know what's happening in those conversations.
Sure.
That could get me in a lot of trouble, and it's just not going to be allowed.
Tobias Merriweather, who goes to high school 2 minutes from my house, won 3 district titles in track yesterday.
Yeah, that's what we're talking about. 1, 2, and 4.
Right. Hasn't been done in this league in 35 years, and he's got to get this kid. And it's Brian's top guy on board. So, yes, we would agree with you on that. And it says, why would Patterson be the one splitting time? I don't think we said that.
If we did say that, Tommy, it was a mistake.
100% agree.
Yeah.
Richard says, great information, guys. Looking forward to 2023. Who is the one player you want the most? That's a big question, man.
I don't have that guy yet. It right now, I mean, just based on who I know of right now, it'd probably either be Dante Moore on offense and Sonny Styles on defense. That would be my answer today. But then I'm like, okay, but what about AJ Harris, a cornerback? And it's like, you're right. That's the problem is this, because football's it's like I think I've said this story before. I had a parent of a 5-star recruit who's now in the NFL one time asked me, why does my son not get the same respect and love that like 5-star basketball players get? And I said, because one basketball player can completely change a program.
Yep.
If a 5-star basketball player goes to Oregon State, they're going to all of a sudden be an NCAA tournament team. If your son goes to Oregon State, they're still going to suck. Right. So it's never about getting that one guy. If they get Dante Moore, if Notre Dame got Dante Moore, Sonny Styles, AJ Harris, Deuce Robinson, and Cardinal Tate, and then Keon Keeley, 6 of the best players in the country, but the rest of their class sucked, then they wouldn't be that good. There
That's
was
just football,
right?
Yeah,
but
just yeah.
I'm going to have some stuff coming out, in late June where I'm going to kind of look at, and there's going to be some other stuff coming up like names to know and things like that. But so it's still early, and as I've said before, I'm still focusing on the 2022 class. It's probably only about halfway done. But just off the top of my head, the three guys that first came to mind when Richard asked that question, and I think that's the best way to answer is what was the first names that popped in your head? The first three names that popped in my head were Dante Moore, Sonny Styles, and AJ Harris. Those were the three names that popped in my head. Then there's Drake Bowen, and there's all these players, but those are the first three names that popped in my head.
All right. Jordan has another one in here. I'm liking Notre Dame's aggressiveness towards 23 and 24 classes. Not only does Notre Dame have a shot at a top 3 class in 22, but in 23, it's looking better than I ever remember this early. Question next.
Agree.
Yeah,
they're doing a great job. Doing a great job. Yeah.
He says Notre Dame runs off 3 top 3 classes in a row, and they've erased the gap with Alabama, Clemson, and Ohio State to win the national championship.
Yeah, I think if that happens, I think this is my critiques of Brian Kelly in the last few years have been about winning a championship. It's not about he's an average coach that should get fired. It's he's not doing what he needs to do to win a championship. If Notre Dame rattles off 3 legitimate top 3 classes in a row, then he's made the changes at those positions, in those areas. And look, he's always been a good big picture coach. You've got a great young defensive coordinator, a very good staff. Even Jeff Quinn, my question is he as good as Harry Hiestand? It's never been about does he suck or not. I mean, that's not the concern. He's a good offensive line coach, but is he a great offensive line coach? Which why you need that's a debate. So those are the things like Tommy Rees. When I said he should have been the OC in 2020, it was about experience. It was never about talent. And as he gets older, and by the time those top 3 classes are going, he's going to be in his 30s. He's going to have multiple years under his belt. You get what I'm saying? So, yeah, if you can close the gap in talent, then yes, I think you will see this team have a chance to compete for a championship because they're not that far off now. They're really not, in my opinion.
I agree. Kelly says, thanks for the response. Coach from Joe Tiber's Irish Eyes.
Yeah, that was so. Even when Mike Frank owned it, it was still called Joe Tiber's Irish Eyes.
Was it really?
Yes, because it was an old scout site, and then of course it became Mike Frank's Irish Eyes, and then Irish Sports Daily, and all that.
Wow,
we were with Scout, and then we went to ESPN, and then we became independent, and that's when I left to get back into coaching. And then I came back, and they were still independent, and then I went to BGI, and now I'm.
What a sordid history!
I have found my forever home.
That's right.
Breakdown because
that's right.
Yeah, because I get to be the boss. It's always better that way.
Mason says, I read that Brian Kelly has completely taken over Cyrus Moss's recruitment. If so, that is awesome to hear that Kelly is really getting out there and pushing for these top guys.
That's not new. This has been happening for a couple months now.
Yeah.
I mean, it really has. I mean, I've said this before. I've heard Brian Kelly's name mentioned more with recruits this summer and spring than I've heard from the previous 5 years combined.
Wow.
So that's what I'm saying. When Kelly asked earlier, how would I grade this offseason? That's why I'm so excited about what coach is doing. It's not just the Marcus Freeman thing. It's not just, some of these other hires. It's all of it together.
Yeah.
Is the thing that you need. And that's where a lot of my optimism comes from.
John hitting us with the super chat. Thank you, John. He says, in regards to recruiting, not just players, but I want to lock down entire states. You give me Indiana, Michigan, and Ohio, and I am smiling. There's a ton of talent in those
Notre Dame. This is what that means. Look, Notre Dame's never going to dominate Ohio because Ohio State's always going to have a big impact there. Sure. But you got to at least be a factor there. Getting Lorenzo Styles would be big. Getting a guy like Sonny Styles would be big. You beat them for a guy or two here and there. You got to be able to start whooping Michigan, and they're started doing that. I mean, they got Rocco last year. If you think about the defensive ends that Notre Dame got that all got drafted, 3 of them were from Michigan, right? Dalen Hayes, Adi, and then Khalid Kareem. They got Nolan Ziegler and Josh Burnham in this class already. So, yeah, you got to do well there. And then you have to get any kid you want out of Indiana. Notre Dame should never lose a kid from Indiana. I think Chicago needs to be there too. Notre Dame should never lose a kid from Chicago that they want.
No question.
After that, I think the 3 most important regions for Notre Dame are the Mid-Atlantic. So basically Maryland, D.C. down to Georgia. I think the Southwest, they've got to be able to have a bigger foothold in Texas and Arizona, which they're starting to do, and then West Coast. I think those are the most important regions. Florida's fine and all that kind of stuff, but Notre Dame's never going to build their roster from recruiting a bunch of kids from Florida. They're going to get some kids here and there, but the Mid-Atlantic is, instead of the kid from Florida, get your Chris Tyree from Virginia or your kids from the Carolinas, right? And then of course, you've got to have some success with those top kids out west. I think those are now there's other areas, St. Louis will provide you some kids here and there. I think but I kind of count St. Louis as sort of the Southwest.
Yeah.
But those are the look, Pennsylvania just doesn't produce the athletes that they used to produce. New Jersey doesn't produce the athletes they used to produce. You're going to be able to get offensive linemen out of there, but not regionally because it's their offensive linemen and your O-line U. But from a region standpoint, to me, those need to be the emphases for Notre Dame in recruiting. As far as if you got to hit those every year. Now, there's going to be kids from other regions that hey, Tennessee is an individual state that I would like to see Notre Dame do more of. But from a regional standpoint, those are the regions that I look at.
All right. Could Indian Irish Invasion 23 kids get offered and commit after this weekend?
It's possible. It's possible.
It's always possible.
There's a couple kids I have my eye on, but I'm not counting on it. But yeah. Yep.
Tommy jumping in. Brian, and this is a really interesting question. He's trying to peek behind the curtain here a little bit, Driscoll.
Yep.
This is interesting. He goes, what is your schedule like? Do you schedule time for film, writing, specific show prep? Do you keep roughly the same number of hours per week or day for those things?
No. I mean, it changes. I mean, I have a schedule. I'm not always good about keeping it, but I have a schedule that says, okay, I'm working on my articles for tomorrow at this time. And then, yes, I try to make time to watch film and those type of things. But then I also have to make time for my wife. Like my wife and I are going to start a thing this summer where at 6:00 every day, basically, we're going to stop what we're doing and we're going to make dinner together and spend some time together. Because that's hard because she's a business owner as well.
And it's just upstairs. Like
right. Yeah. But you'd be surprised how long we go without seeing each other.
That's what I'm saying. Like it's
right.
You guys are
like,
doing
I have
your thing.
A really smart wife. So she's
Yeah.
not just staying at home and making me food and bringing me tea. She's taking time out of her job because she loves me to bring me tea.
Yeah.
But you have to really make sure that you're doing that time to make sure that your family doesn't get pushed to the side. And that was one of the biggest mistakes I made when I got back into coaching in 2013 to 2014 is I still coached like I was a single guy.
Yeah.
And she caught the brunt of that. And she was great. I mean, I had 15 receivers over my house and she, making barely $30,000 and my wife's got this big old spread for him, that's just how she was. But, she didn't get enough of that time. And we both struggle with that because now she's running her own business and all that. So we have to dedicate that time. But yeah, I mean, Tommy, to your point, it can be a challenge. If you don't stick to a schedule, it can be a challenge because all of a sudden it's like, oh my gosh, it's 11:00. But, and I still have 3 articles. I haven't got an article ready for tomorrow. Shoot, I haven't cut up the podcast yet and those type of things. So it's a challenge and you have to stick to the schedule. And when I get off schedule is when my whole world gets jacked up. So yeah, I have to make a schedule, but honestly, there was times this past season because of everything going on and I didn't have anyone else working for me that, where film watching had to kind of take a back seat and I didn't do as much opponent prep, like the articles I wanted to do. We did enough for our shows, but that was it. That's going to change this year because we're going to have a little bit of a bigger team. And, and I think this format has really helped us with that.
Yes, I agree with that.
And a lot of that type of thing too.
Yeah, it's actually taken some stuff off of our plates, which is awesome. All right, let's see here. Tom wants to know what recruits are currently the focus of Kelly's time.
Honestly, I can't tell you. I mean, what I mean by that is, Tom, is it's not that, I don't know. I'm hearing him mention with a lot of kids. I mean, Junior Tuihalamaka, Jalen Sneed, Cyrus Moss, Anthony Lucas, Devin Moore, Ben. I mean, all these kids that we talk about, I think most of them have talked to Kelly to some degree. And you think about where we've come. Remember how much we criticized Brian Kelly when Tyson Ford committed, and then I think it was in an article either with Tom Loy or Carter Carrells had mentioned he'd never spoken to Brian Kelly before and just crushed him for it because we had heard that story a million times. That story will not be told about any kid that commits from this point to the end of the thing. And that's what we say, you got to give coach credit. Like, look, I'm not going to keep hammering him for the past when he's not doing that anymore for right now. And I hope it continues. But I honestly, Tom, can't think of a kid that's high on Notre Dame's board right now that has said, I have never talked to Coach Kelly. And not just not talked to him, but not talked to him recently. That's the difference.
Right.
And so, I think the big names that we've talked about, the linebackers, Cyrus Moss, Anthony Lucas, Tobias Merriweather, those guys from what I can tell and from conversations we've had with them, they're all hearing from Brian Kelly.
Yeah.
Which is huge.
Yep.
Huge.
Shannon wants a shout out to everybody that's watching. I hope everyone in the chat has plans to come to a Notre Dame home game this fall. ND is such an epic place to watch a game between campus, the pep rally, tailgating, and the atmosphere. It is truly awesome, and it was missed last year. Let me tell you, walking up to the stadium like it was May 2nd in the middle of October it tells you how special Notre Dame is.
I will never look forward to parking far away from the stadium. I never thought I would look forward to parking far away from the stadium.
Yeah,
because that was the one nice thing is we could just kind of park and walk right in, and
which was great.
I would rather have to walk through all the fans and all that stuff.
Well, that's the thing. Like walking through the fans and walking through the atmosphere, it's part of the fun, man. It gets me primed. Like by the time I get to the press box, I'm like, all right, man, let's go. Let's do this. Oh, wait, kickoff's 2 hours from now.
Yeah.
But
yeah.
But let's see here. We got some responses to what we were talking about earlier. Remember, Brian asked us about that show, about the recruits and the path to the draft and all that. He goes, he wants us to do one.
It would be the only thing I'm qualified to do is just try to get guys on the show. I like
right.
Yeah, I'll try it. I'll definitely try it. We'll try to get some of those guys on.
And Kelly responding to when we were talking about Will Fuller, he said he was more of a low 4.5 guy in high school from all accounts, fast, but not some 4.
He wasn't really that fast. He was more quick.
Yeah, exactly.
He was more quick than he was fast.
And then Kelly's going to bust your chops. The only one Brian got wrong was Jonas Gray.
No, he's not busting my chops on that one because the story there is I told Jonas that. I met Jonas one day around campus, and I was like, man, I got to be honest with you. I did not think you were going to be a good player at Notre Dame. And I got to say, I enjoy like heck watching. You know, he's such a good-hearted kid.
Yeah,
you know?
That's funny.
He laughed, and I mean, you know, because some kids you don't say that to because they get real sensitive and all that. Yeah, right. Jonas isn't that kind of kid. But yeah, I said that too, Jonas. I think Kelly knows that. I said that to Jonas. I was like, man, because I didn't think Jonas was going to be that good, and he wasn't for 3 years. But man, he was so good in 2011. I still say. I would like to see what Notre Dame could have done at the end of the 2011 season if Jonas Gray didn't get hurt. I think they'd have beat Stanford. I think they'd have beat Florida State. And who knows what happens if Notre Dame goes 10-3 in year 2 instead of 8-5.
Yeah. Let's see here. KMA Preston, do you think Evans and Madden will be the only transfers that Notre Dame pursues?
And Jack Cohn, but yeah.
Well, because he's already here.
I think that's it. Yeah, I think that's it.
Okay. Old Grim. Can we see Spindler move to the right side to open up the left for Patterson? If they're going to put Madden on the right side,
I'm putting Rocco wherever Madden's lined.
Yes, 100% agree.
And if you're going to put Madden at right guard where he has played before, and again, just to explain it again for people that got in the show late, I don't look. Patterson hasn't played guard; he's been a center. So, and he didn't practice this spring, so you can move him wherever the heck you want, and it's going to be new for him. Madden has been a right guard. Put him at right guard, put Rocco at right guard, and then put Patterson at left guard. That's what I would do. If you're going to leave Patterson at guard. I still say I would have liked to have seen him at tackle, but that's a different conversation. If they decided they wanted to put, Josh Lugg at left guard and just have a massive – because that's the other thing they could do is they could put – if they put Patterson at right tackle and you have Zeke Krell at center, then you have some athleticism around Cain Madden.
Yeah.
They can overcome his lack of athleticism. Then you've got this massive left side with Josh Lugg and Blake Fisher.
Right.
So there are some different things you could do. I just at this point in time, I don't know what they're going to do. Those are just our opinions of what they could and should do.
And bringing in Madden, it kind of throws everything into kind of flux to a degree, right? I mean, it's like, oh, they're bringing him in. Okay, well, there's going to be some dominoes, and it'll be interesting to see how they end up doing it. John says, I'm excited about the 3 incoming freshmen, JoJo, Colsey, and Collie.
Yeah. There's a lot of people excited about JoJo, which I'm excited because he was a late low, and he was ranked like 1,000th by 247.
Because he went to Michigan City. You know what I mean? Like, you're not getting a whole lot of guys out of that area.
He can play, and he's a really good kid.
Yes.
Really humble, just a really good kid.
Joseph, excuse me. Brian, do you envision Notre Dame's offense using an H-back analogous to Tommy Tremble's role in 2020?
Joseph, I don't know if we're going to see the same volume of that, but we will definitely see that. Bless you. We will definitely see either Kane Barong or Kevin Bauman doing some of that. I just don't know if we're going to see it as much as we saw with Tommy Tremble. I think when Notre Dame is in their 2 tight end sets right now, based on where the depth chart is now, it's going to be George Takis and Michael Mayer. I don't think either one of those guys are going to be doing that a whole lot. But I do think we will see
somebody.
I think Cain might be best suited for that because of his body type and his athleticism, because he's so much faster. He can kind of get out into a pass route a little faster from that further back position. So I could easily see Cain Barong developing into that kind of role.
Okay.
Sure.
All right. Lucas says, I don't see either one of the transfers being starters, at least until they prove themselves. I think Notre Dame is looking at them purely for added depth, experience, and rotation roles. I would say they're looking at them as both starters. I think you and I believe that Madden should be a depth piece unless he goes and earns it. But Evans is
would be Notre Dame's best cornerback.
Yes.
The minute
the second he walks in the room. Yeah, right. Yes,
yeah,
absolutely.
And again, could some guys be better than him in 2 to 3 years? Maybe. But right now, and again, this is off of and I've got about 5 all 22 games of him from 2009 to 2020. So this isn't just me watching TV. This is me watching all 22 film. I'm telling you, this kid could be the best cornerback that Notre Dame has had under Brian Kelly. And I have not forgotten about Julian Love. I'm talking talent. Maybe he doesn't have the numbers and the All-American thing, but I'm telling you, Caleb evans is going to be in the conversation for the best cornerback Notre Dame has had.
Yeah, I think he's a stud. I've watched some of his film too, and especially playing against the teams that he played against, who just throw the ball and throw the ball and throw the ball.
Mm-hmm.
Tested a lot and was really, really good. So
little baseball update here by Shannon. Notre Dame baseball leads Central Michigan 4-0 in the bottom of the 5th inning. Yep,
that's awesome. I want to go to those games.
Yep. Scott Frisbee says, how does Cain Madden compare to Sam Mustipher in size, and can he play center? Sam was a little bit longer, in my opinion. Sam was a lot better athlete than
that's the problem.
And he had much better feet.
For me,
you have to look. You can't put a slow-footed guy at center.
Correct.
You cannot.
Nailed it.
Jordan Schreiber says, any updates on Xavier Bradshaw? I hope the Irish push for his recruitment. Look, if Notre Dame pushes for Xavier Bradshaw, they'll get him. Right now, they haven't done that. And from the last, we were told that right now they're working on setting up a visit for him in the fall, which is just further evidence that they plan on him being a backup option to other players, which is disappointing to say the least. All right. Tommy Leonard, again,
he's really pulling
I'm trying to work through this quickly because I know that we got to wrap up here soon. But do you guys have any game day rituals or special clothing that must be worn on game day or anything like that? So 2 things. Number one is I don't have a ritual, but as a coach, I'm used to wearing the same thing every Saturday. So I just kind of get in the habit of wearing jeans and the same polo every week. We are going to have Irish Breakdown. You've seen ours. We're going to have Irish Breakdown polos this year.
Pumped.
My only game day ritual is when I'm in town, I like to spend time with my wife. That's the thing, is we'll have breakfast together. But a lot of times, in previous years, part of that was because we went to games together because my wife does photography for games.
Yeah. Yep.
And now I don't know if that's going to happen in 2021. I don't know where that's going to be. But I mean, it was just because at some point in time, you just got to get away from it and clear your head. But no, sure. I don't get into the rituals like I did when I was a coach. And those weren't rituals; those were just habits.
Yeah,
you want to get in certain habits to make sure that you're getting everything done and you're where you need to be. But I don't really have it.
When I was a football coach, I would eat the same lunch every day when I would have a game, and it became like a joke because I'd be in the teachers' lounge eating the same. Oh, you must have a game today. Yes, I do. Mm-hmm. And then as far as for Notre Dame, I wouldn't say it's a ritual, but I do the same thing because it's literally all day. Like, I mean, I have a radio show that I do early on that Brian.
It's just a schedule. It's just a schedule.
So not really a ritual, but I do the same thing every single game because that's what we do.
Like, I don't have socks that I have to wear, underwear I have to wear. Like nothing
not
like
as a fan.
That. Like I have to do this thing where I have to go walk to the Goog and light a candle.
I have way more rituals as a coach. Like I have the same pens in my back pocket to write out the lineup. Things like that.
You're one of those, huh?
I am totally one of those. And somebody took my pen and I about flipped out on them. But anyway, okay, moving on. So yes, I'm more ritualistic when I'm coaching and I have control over the outcome as opposed to a fan of Notre Dame. So.
Yeah. Jordan Schreiber says, I saw a top targets for Alabama in the Athletic, and neither Devin Moore or Benjamin Morrison was on that list. It was 2 other cornerbacks. Is this good for Notre Dame? I wouldn't care too much about what the Athletic says about recruiting. I think there was one thing where somebody told me I don't know who it was. Somebody told me said that there was a story about on the Athletic about, or maybe it was SI, about CJ Williams, and they didn't mention Notre Dame. Those aren't outlets that are necessarily geared towards the latest recruiting updates. But if it was that kind of thing, I think that's good for Notre Dame. But Alabama wants both those guys. I just think Notre Dame leads for them. I think that's really where you're at. D. Beasy across the world says, can Tyree beat out Williams and become RB1? I don't think he'll have the opportunity to do so, nor do I think you should necessarily do so. I think that even if maybe he's better than Kyron Williams, I still would have Kyron as your starter, and maybe at end of game sometimes, maybe have him differently, but I don't see that happening. I think could he end up being better when it's all said and done than Kyron Williams is? Sure, absolutely. But I think that sometimes it's like, look, we got a good thing going here, and if Chris is hot, then you ride him. But Kyron is still your starter. Jordan says, I really hope Mickens and Freeman can close in June on Moore and Morrison, and their recruitments aren't stretched out. Agree completely. That's going to be the big key is you got it. If those kids carry their recruitments into the fall, that could be a little bit trouble. And then Jordan also says, I know elite cornerbacks aren't attracted to Notre Dame, but what about elite safeties? Because Indy has a track record there. Yes, sort of. It's been, there's been spotty periods. You have Harrison Smith and then Kyle Hamilton, but you had Alohi and Jalen, but there's also been some years when Notre Dame. Avery Sebastian was starting at Notre Dame not that long ago at safety. As far as I think Kyle Hamilton this year could change some things there, but I just think a lot of that is about geography. That's really what it boils down to. But yeah.
Well, we seem to have lost Brian, and that's not good. But I will move on to the next question because I'm sure he'll be back here really soon. Oh, and there he is.
That was a sign. If they can develop, to me, if they can develop Kyle Hamilton into like a top 10 pick, I think that's going to change some things.
All right,
I do.
And Liam's got a good one here. If Evans does commit, what does this mean for the younger players in the DB room? Transfers? Question mark.
It could. Yeah, it could. Sure. It won't be like Ryan Barnes and Philip Riley, but what could that mean for Ramon Henderson?
Sure.
Clarence Lewis, Caleb Alford, potentially, especially since you've got Cam Hart's also a younger guy. So it could, but I also, it could.
I'll let you get this next one, Brian.
Oh boy. Okay.
You see it?
No, I'm still trying to get caught up from when I got
bad. Here, you have the greatest wife.
Yeah. Duh. Yeah.
And then David says, remember that question, coffee, tea, or me? She gave you tea.
Yeah.
All right.
That's about enough wife comments there, guys. All right. Let's go.
That's why I was leaving it to you, man. I was going to let you talk about all that.
Yeah.
But Sean says left to right, Fisher, Patterson, Zeke, Rocco, Madden, Lug. Oh my. Yeah. I think
it could be.
That's potentially what we're going to be looking at. Let's see. Here we go. Searcher Green, we were talking about Navy being on Notre Dame's schedule. He says, I'd rather drop USC than Navy. I love that history.
I don't want to drop either one of them, but I honestly wouldn't necessarily disagree with you on that one.
Yeah.
If you told me you could only keep one, especially with the fact that Notre Dame is scheduling Clemson and Ohio State's and Alabama's and Florida's.
Sure.
And, you don't necessarily need USC to kind of build your overall schedule, but I also like that. That's my favorite rivalry. It's not my most cherished from like the Navy standpoint and all that, but as far as like my favorite rivalry, that's it. I'd never want to see that rivalry go away.
I love to beat USC from a respect situation. I love to beat Michigan because I hate them. It's different.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And I agree with you. I enjoy the USC tradition and all of that. ND from Jordan. ND is going to the playoff again. Just have to see what they do when they get there. But I believe this is their best chance to win it all since 2012 when we thought K-State was playing ND in the BCS final.
And Jordan also said he loves being a part of this community in another chat. But you're trying to tease us into talking about what next week's show is going to be about.
That's the second time.
But yes,
second time.
Yes. Yeah,
we're going to have this conversation.
Definitely get into that. We will definitely get into that next week.
Lucas says, do you think Notre Dame's offense has looked a little lackluster at times because our defense could be a top 10 or even 5? Regardless, the offense needs to hang if they have any chance of getting to the playoff. You've talked about this a bunch of times. Your big thing, and I agree with you wholeheartedly, is that defense will get you to the title game.
It'll get you to the show. It's not going to win you a title. You got to be able to score points.
Do it. Yeah, you have to score points. And I have not changed my opinion on that either.
Right. Right.
Omar, I would never take Navy off the schedule, and that triple option makes me sweat every single year.
Same here.
All right.
Did you get this question about Joe? So do you see USC as becoming a formidable recruiter now since they have gotten the Corona Centennial kid to flip from Clemson and that LB, that flip from LSU? What are they doing there? Well, hiring Dante Williams helped. Dante Williams is a very strong recruiter. I think that helped. But I think that there's still a lot. USC is always going to be able to flip some highly ranked kids. The question is can they consistently get the depth on their roster? And I don't see that. And I think that's always going to hurt them under this current staff. Yeah. So that's
check that next one from Omar. I think it's
is it me or are there a lot of Notre Dame fans clamoring for freshmen at quarterback and wide receiver, but nervous about freshmen at offensive line? What's happening there?
I think a lot of that has to do with just physical development because a lot of times
technical. Look,
it's also you have to get in the weight room. You got to be.
You don't have to be the most fundamentally sound wide receiver to be a baller.
Correct.
You don't, but you have to be very fundamentally sound to be a successful offensive lineman.
Yep, couldn't have said it better myself.
And I think to your point though, the strength part of it is too there, Vince.
Yes. It just takes time to become a collegiate offensive lineman. Not many guys come out of high school like Blake Fisher, and they're ready physically to take on that kind of a role.
Yeah, Jay said prayers for Stephon and his family. Lost his brother. So sad. I did not see that. That's terrible. I got to know Stephon and his mother pretty well during his recruiting process. She's a good lady. So that is very sad if that is true. So we'll certainly keep him in our prayers for sure.
Benjamin, he says, Cain Madden's body type gives me hope moving forward. My wife thinks I should look more like Michael Mayer, though.
Yeah, you and me both. You and me both. Jordan says Michigan. Here we go. Jordan says, I got it, Vince. Michigan sucks. Record especially their colleges where top-rated QBs go to transfer, and they just got another 5-star QB in 2022. Why would Dante Moore ever choose Michigan over Notre Dame? Why is favored now? I think he's favored now just because the kid grew up as a 5-star. I mean, as sort of a Michigan guy. I don't think that it's a situation where he is the lock to Michigan that people make it out to be. I think there's just a lot of, in my opinion, there's a lot of assumptions going on there that I don't think are necessarily accurate. And I don't know what 2022 5-star that they got. Did they get a kid today or something like that? I know they got a 5-star kid in 2021 in JJ McCarthy, but I didn't know that they got one in 2022. So I'd be curious to see who that is. A lot of stuff sometimes happens during the show, man.
Yeah.
So, and this is where Jordan said, I agreed. I love being part of this Notre Dame community, but yet he's still trying to get us to jump the gun on our conversation. Now, Jordan, we appreciate you so much for being a part of this community, buddy. I truly appreciate it.
No doubt.
Here we go, John. Jordan, another hardball sleepover. Or he climbed a tree and jumped in a pool. I have no idea. He's a strange dude.
He's a real
very
strange dude. Yeah.
Yep. Jeffrey Rohrbacher. We'll see what Cain's made of when he's going up against Mills, Adamiola, Lacey, Cross, etc. Agree completely. He didn't even talk about Heinisch.
Yeah.
Notre Dame will always play Navy as long as they want to. I agree, and I think that's how it should be.
Kyle,
this is great. Kyle, man. Vince is still here. Didn't know he could sit still this long.
I didn't know I could either.
Yeah, it's a challenge.
And it's because that was an hour ago that he wrote that. So it is what it is, man.
So, but let's see if we can get to a couple more here. All right, guys, even though we have Madden, and even if he starts, if he's no good, we just put in Spindler and someone else, right? I think it's no. See, to me, I get that, Brad. I'm very sympathetic to that. The problem, however, is if he ends up not being any good, then you've taken reps away from guys that need those reps.
Correct.
You've taken however many first-team reps away from Rocco Spindler, for example. That to me, that's something that's something important that if he ends up not being good, it is a loss because he needed all those reps. But if he's at least a solid player, then it doesn't hurt.
Right. And Liam wants to know, won't the O-line improve a lot in fall camp just because of who they have to practice against? Yeah, they absolutely will, as long as they are practicing at the same position. I guess that's my biggest thing, practicing at the same position, because we saw a lot of guys moving around in the spring, and that doesn't necessarily do them as much good. They need to be consistently practicing at the same position each time if they want to get better consistently. And if that is the case, if they find some guys and they decide that, hey, look, this is your spot, go for it, then yeah, they're absolutely going to get better, especially because of who they have to practice against. Because Brian and I have talked about it on numerous occasions about how good we think this defensive line is and how deep this defensive line is. And so whether you're practicing with the first team or whether you're practicing with the second team on offense, you're still going to be going up against solid competition. So yes, I completely agree that they will get better. Joe says, as a player, I would be quite upset if they had to bring in a transfer to compete for my position. If he was that good, why was he not recruited to better programs out of high school? That is kind of a multi-tiered answer, Joe. A lot of times guys can get better from the time they get out of high school and they get into college, whether they get good coaching or whether they just get physically better. That is absolutely a possibility, which is why I am not a huge fan of the not sitting out rule, because I feel like those lower schools, the Tulsas, the Marshalls of the world, are going to become breeding grounds for these big schools. The MAC, for example, Big Ten is going to feast off the MAC when it comes to finding guys. It's going to be like the minor leagues of the Big Ten. And that's what I worry about. And Brian and I have had that discussion a few times, in that when they do that, when they take away the year sitting out, the MAC is going to become like the minor leagues for the Big Ten, because they're just going to poach those guys after they've been coached up. They've gotten physically bigger. They've shown that they can play. They're going to get poached. And I see that being the case. So that's what I'm saying. Just because you didn't get recruited out of high school doesn't mean you're not a good player. You can become a really good player in college. Right. As far as the would you be pissed? Yeah, heck yeah, I'd be pissed that you're going out and you're finding somebody to take my spot because you're telling me that I'm not good enough. And so that would make me want to compete harder. For some guys, that's going to make them want to transfer. I mean, it just depends on how you accept that challenge, right? I mean, yes, I would be hot. I would not be happy about that, Brian.
Did you answer the second part of that question? I'm sorry, I drank a little bit too much tea during this.
I just basically said, I kind of went down a rabbit hole talking about how some guys change when they get out of high school.
I don't care what a guy was in high school. I mean, he was even Graham Glasgow was a walk-on at Michigan, and he's now making $10+ million.
Cain Madden was a walk-on at Marshall, right?
That doesn't have a lot to do with it for me, because I think that's especially true for linemen, because guys develop so differently. Mm-hmm. So I don't really care that he was a walk-on. I don't really care whatever. I mean, to me, I care about what I see on film now, and I would use a different "if he was that good" thing, and that was, if he was that good, he wouldn't be a 60-year senior in college. He would be in the NFL right now.
That's fair.
But I don't know if they're necessarily recruiting him to be Liam Eichenberg. That's the difference.
Yep. I skipped over Jay's question. It was more of a recruiting question.
Yeah. So Carnell Tate is camping at the Irish Invasion and visiting at the end of June. So that makes 3 visits since April. I sure hope Dell gets this done along with Reese and Kelly. Absolutely. And honestly, Coach Reese is going to have to step in and kind of do a lot with that one, in my opinion. This is a good. Honestly, Tom, at the risk of being called a Debbie Downer, which of the current 2022 commits are most likely to decommit? I don't think there are any. I think the only kid that I was worried about decommitting, and not even worried, the only kid that I thought would decommit was Jack Nickel, because I knew they were recruiting other players over him. Yeah, I think right now, based on what I see, the only guy that I would be worried about would be Jadarian Price if you get another running back. But that's just pure speculation. For all I know, they told him when he was going to come, he's going to have competition. But honestly, anything can happen. But there's literally no one on the roster or on the class right now that I would say, hey, I'm worried about that guy. There's not one.
Sean has a great question here. Guys, what is your favorite football movie besides Rudy? Mine would have to be The Program. And I will say I watched The Program about a week and a half ago for like the 20 millionth time. Love that movie. Made my son watch it with me. So that's a really good one. Is it wrong that I like Unnecessary Roughness?
It's necessary roughness, and it's not wrong. It's beautiful. Okay, that's my favorite. And again, you watch it now and it's corny, but I love it. It's hilarious.
I love that movie.
The football scenes are so terrible, but it's hilarious. It's just a funny movie.
I love that movie.
Yeah.
All right. Dynasty ISP says, great show today, guys. I'm planning to head to the FSU game. If you were a betting man, what % do you give Notre Dame to win that game? I'm worried about flying all the way from California to see a loss. 92.3%.
Yeah.
It's high for me. It's very
mine probably
very high.
I just don't. I don't think Florida State matches up with Notre Dame anywhere. I just don't. And they needed Cain Madden a whole lot more than Notre Dame did.
Oh yeah,
that's the other thing. I mean, he steps right in the lineup there.
Let's see. Well, we were talking about 100 times. He says Colsey ran a 10.8.
That was as a senior. Yeah. Tobias ran his 10.9 as a junior. I mean,
yes.
So those are some big, tall kids that can move.
Right. Oh, and you were talking about your Virginia bias earlier, and Tommy's always going to hammer you for this, so you might as well just get used to it.
But Tommy didn't realize I lived in Ohio more years than I lived in Virginia. But one's just a better state than the other.
You can't remove your Virginia bias. It's stuck in you for some unknown reason, well, aside from you being from there.
Look, one of my first career passes I threw as a high school kid was as a freshman in a scrimmage against Western Branch, and it was and Dre Bly caught it. The problem is Dre Bly was not on my team.
Playing for the other team.
That's when I realized. So you want to know some people say, who's the greatest high school player you ever saw? And I've said it's Ronald Curry. And I played against Plaxico Burress twice. I played against Deion Dyer, James Boyd, played against Dre Bly in a scrimmage. I've seen some great players, but Ronald Curry is the best I've ever seen. But until I moved to Virginia as a freshman in high school, do you know who the greatest high school player I ever saw in person was? Mike Elston. Mike Elston played running back at St. Mary's.
Shut up.
Running back in line.
You played against him?
Yes. Well, no, I was a kid. I was in elementary and middle school.
Okay.
So I went to, in Ohio, at those smaller Midwestern towns, it's like you go to the same elementary, middle, and high school. It's like same school, right? And you grow up with the same kids.
I got you.
I was kind of always groomed to be a quarterback at that school. And so, like, when I was in middle school, even before I even started playing football, I was a water boy and a ball boy for the football team, just to kind of be around the program.
Yeah, right.
And I remember when St. Mary's was about the only school in the league that could beat Bath at the time. And Mike Elson played running back, and he was a beast because he's like 6'5" and over 200. I mean, he was a beast.
Yeah, I bet.
And I remember as like a little 5th or 6th grader walking past him being like, that's the biggest person I've ever seen in my life. And he was a running back. But he was he was a beast, and he signed with Michigan. But I mean, he was a monster. Best high school football player I ever saw until I got to high school, and Dre Bly picked me off. And with all due respect to Coach Elston, Dre Bly is better than Coach Elston.
Yeah, I mean, I think he'd probably agree with you on that.
Yeah.
Connor, he said, if you could pick a high school for Notre Dame to have a steady recruiting pipeline with, which one would it be?
IMG?
That was going to be mine because they can recruit all the other high schools.
IMG?
Yeah. That was exactly going to be mine.
Yeah.
David says, didn't Tony Sacco play for Penn State? And he says, because that guy didn't wash his hands. That's like a mic drop moment.
Can we stop the show now? Oh, darn it. We got too many questions.
But we also have a super chat. So I'm throwing it up there, Brian. K. Grant, thank you for the super chat. He goes, my work schedule never allows me to come in when you're live. I appreciate the work that you both did put in. Thanks for the content. Also, the Michigan Convo last podcast was electric.
Well, the reason we've gone so long today, my man, is so that you could be in the chat.
That's right.
I said, with no truth behind it whatsoever. But I am glad that you're able to in it. But look, I always enjoy banging on Michigan because they just have no comebacks for anything. Oh, we beat you last time we played. I don't care. You still stuck.
Yeah.
Well, what happened when you played Ohio State? This Michigan fans are the worst. And I never understood the word Walmart Wolverines until I moved to this area. And then you see it. Like, it just – I'm not a fan of Michigan fans. And Harbaugh's made it worse because, like, Brady Hoke you couldn't root against. He's just a big meatwad, nice guy kind of thing. When they had Rich Rod and then now Harbaugh, it makes it so much easier to dislike.
It does make it easy. It makes it so easy. But anyway, John says, Brian, don't hate on Barnaby's.
I just don't. I've been there a couple times. It's been a while. Maybe like 2011 was the last time I went. Some guy invited me to go there, and I just like, I'm a little snobby when it comes to pizza.
You kind of are.
I don't like Chicago style pizza at all.
Yeah. That's okay.
Yeah. So
it's okay. Notre Dame 2164 says, I don't understand why Avery Davis doesn't get more respect than he does. Dependable, versatile, and talented. One of my favorite players, to be honest, because he made so many position changes.
Right.
Nobody knows
and
about
he
him.
wasn't considered a highly ranked recruit. I think that factors into it as well.
I agree with that.
Yeah.
And
he didn't exactly have like blow you away numbers last year. I mean, you know what I mean? Like he had some clutch moments, but he only had like 24, 25 catches last year. So
yeah,
I get that one.
That'll go up. Brandon Krim says, is there any truth to the FSU hype train? Nope.
Not this year. I like Mike Norvell. I think Mike Norvell has a chance if they give him time to get that program turned around. But even if it does start in 2021, it won't be in game one.
Right.
You know, that might be a situation like, remember USC in 2016? Like they started like 1-3. But by the end of the year, that USC team could have played with just about anybody. I mean, that was a really good USC team by the end of the year. But early on, they hadn't hit their stride yet.
Tom wants to know more catches, Williams or any of the wide receivers. I think
there'll be at least two receivers with more catches than him.
It's gonna be wide receivers, but Williams is gonna be in there. Don't worry about that.
There's some Deion Colsey love here. Sean says, John, the more I hear about Colsey, the more excited I am that he may be able to get some serious PT as a frosh. And then John's response is great. Sean, for sure, 6'4" tall, 6'8" high jump, 10, 800 meters. Deion, learn to fly, fade, and post, Coach Reese. That would be awesome. I would love that.
That is fantastic. That is awesome. Let's see. Josh says, I hardly get to watch you guys live, so I rely on the podcast. Thanks for the objective reviews and updates. My number one source for ND news. You should start seeing my dad and uncle joining.
Excellent. Yeah. Love that.
Making the family bigger, man. That's awesome. Yeah, that is awesome. Thanks, Josh.
Some Avery Davis love in this chat for sure.
Yeah, which should be. Thomas says, I was a QB in high school, played De La Salle when Aaron Taylor and Amani Toomer were on my team, or on the team. My God, what a butt whooping. We lost by 60. Baseball for me in college.
Yeah. My high school roommate, or my college roommate, my last year of college, our running back, who played at a really good school in Virginia, they played against Ronald Curry's team in the state semifinals and lost by about 60. Like, that's how good that – but part of it was I watched him play – I was a senior when he was a junior, and we weren't in the playoffs my senior year because we had a new coach who was awful. So I went to watch him play against Deep Creek. He had 6 touchdowns in the game, 3 passing, 1 rushing. He returned a punt for a touchdown, and he picked off the pass and ran it back for a touchdown.
Good
That
Lord.
Deep Creek team had like 8 players go D1. That's where D'Angelo Hall's from. And, I mean, he was a bit. That's why nobody ever heard of Michael Vick. They were from the same conference.
Yeah.
Like, well, Michael Vick, I ain't that good. Look at Ronald Curry. I still say, and I'll take this to my grave, Vince, if Ronald Curry would have gone to a football school and only focused on football, he'd have been better than Michael Vick. I wholeheartedly believe that. Boo Williams ruined Ronald Curry's football career, in my opinion. He's now, I believe, the quarterback's coach for the Saints.
Oh, okay.
So, yeah.
Does the pickup by the pickup of Madden, does this free up Patterson to move back to center?
I don't think so. I still think Zeke Correll is one of their 5 best.
Yep.
I still think he is.
Agree. Let's see here. Here we go. Skyler, love the show. If Griffin exceeds expectations, does Hamilton go down? Has one of the best safeties to wear the blue and gold.
Yeah, and I think you're saying like that's going to help protect Kyle to be able to play his game. Is what I think he's saying.
Yes,
because then Kyle doesn't have to protect the other safety, which is, I think, Skyler, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that's where he's coming from.
Yeah,
I think so. Now, look, he's got to have a big year this year because so far, Harrison Smith, when he ended his career, is still better than what Kyle Hamilton was in 2020, right? But if Kyle projects the way that I think he should, yeah, he could definitely go down. Look, he could go down as one of the best safeties they've had in the last 20 years for sure. And that's saying something when you consider Harrison Smith, Glenn Earl, Jerome Sapp. I mean, they've had some good football players at that position. There's no doubt about it. There's no doubt about it.
We got another super chat.
Kay Grant's got another question.
Throwing it in. He goes, I apologize if this was already discussed, but will the QB Moore commit to Notre Dame when Harbaugh gets fired, or is that not a factor? Also, Avery Davis is a beast. And you're
not a factor. Not a fact. And I don't know if it's Michigan or Notre Dame. I mean, there are other programs that are recruiting him. Dante Moore is going to be a national recruit. He's a 5-star kid. He's extremely talented. He's also really smart. He's got some charisma. He's going to be a national recruit. There's no doubt about it. You're going to see everybody going after Dante Moore. I don't think it's a Notre Dame or Michigan situation. I think Notre Dame is a legitimate player there. I think Michigan's a legitimate player there, but I don't think it's a Notre Dame Michigan battle only. Now, if it becomes a Notre Dame Michigan battle and Harbaugh gets fired, that creates a unique situation because there's two ways to look at that. One is, it opens up a situation for Notre Dame to win that one, but then it's like, well, who do they hire?
Right.
And they could maybe make a hire that says, oh, wow, that's an impressive hire. That could sway it, but I don't think Michigan under their current leadership would make that kind of hire.
Right. Brandon says, my fear for the 23 recruiting class is that Notre Dame is going to take 2 commits early that may not be as elite as some of the other prospects they're in the mix for, in a class that will probably be smaller than the last 2. And he says, for example, Luttrell, Markway, etc.
Yeah, Luttrell's an interesting one. There's been some talk at other places that he could be a guy that commits this summer. I haven't been told that by my sources. I don't know if I would necessarily push for him early. He had some recent times at an event that were less than impressive from a testing standpoint. Markway is actually a really highly ranked player. He's a top 100 recruit. I just like other guys better. But yeah, I get that, Brandon. I think there are some positions where maybe you could take some good players early, not great players. But if Notre Dame, but see, that's why June is so important. And this factors into my comments earlier about why is June so important for Notre Dame? Because if Notre Dame loads up and they get the 2 linebackers, they get a couple receivers, they get a running back, they fill up on the offensive line, they get the 2 corners, Morrison and Moore that I want, they get a safety. Now, all of a sudden, Notre Dame can say, hey, look, we are loaded in 2022. We don't have needs for players in 2023. We have need for impact talent. And because it's going to be a smaller class, whereas if you're going into the fall and you haven't met your needs at corner or receiver or or not tight end, safety or other positions, offensive line, then you may have to say, well, we have needs for numbers in that class, and you maybe take some commitments earlier than you'd expect. But I'm with you, Brandon. I don't want to see them fill up in 2023 early. I think the kids that they should take now are kids with high ceilings. That's who I would like to see them take. But I don't think they're in any rush to force kids into committing in 2023.
All right.
Oh, wait a minute. Hold on.
Oh.
Notre Dame's up 10-0 in the top of the 8th.
That was
Central
45
Michigan.
minutes ago. So
Yep.
hopefully that game's over by now.
Yep.
Let's see here. Still trying to figure out why Notre Dame is so high on Nick Anderson. The fact that he may be in the class over Bradshaw or maybe even Merriweather is something I dwell on constantly.
I agree, with the exception of they are not going to not take Tobias Merriweather. From my understanding, is if Tobias is going to be a take whenever Tobias wants to come to Notre Dame.
Yep.
But the general premise I agree with. I don't get that one. I think that one is you are not confident in your ability to develop a player, so you develop that position. So you're taking a kid who's more advanced technically. That's what I think that one's about, and just that's my opinion.
All right, Brian, I've got to run. I am getting hammered over here. Okay. Well, I'm not running anywhere, and that's okay. Let's see here. Let's go to the next one. There's Brian.
Sorry about that. Where do we leave off, Vince?
We are at 3:37.
Question. Okay. All right. So yeah, I got it. All right. Thanks, Vince.
Guys, I got to roll. Got to run to the post office before it closes. It is what it is, man. So thank you, guys. This was 3 hours and 13 minutes, which I enjoyed thoroughly, and I cannot wait for next week. And I will see you guys next week. Brian, we'll talk.
Yep. See you, bud. Old Grim says, I used to bring my dad each year for a game. He was a 1950 grad, had to take time out for the war. Yeah, I can imagine. Yeah, that's now I'm curious if you said you're 69, so yeah, I know the answer to that one. But let's see here. I'd be okay with dropping Navy, glorified Uber. I disagree with that. Jeffrey says Brian's wife is stealing his bandwidth. So it's funny that you say that. So my wife, actually, when we first started doing this, Vince will tell you we were having problems with my streaming wasn't good. So my wife actually created a network just for me to use. So that way that was not an issue anymore because she's really technologically smart. So she actually was able to do that. So, which is pretty awesome. Connor, Vince, I see you're still around. Connor said, have a nice weekend and screw Michigan. So yeah, because Vince loves that one. He hasn't quite left yet, so even though he's not in the show, I can still see him down there. But he did get that one, Connor. All right, Domer TX22. Does the new transfer rule change recruiting strategy in terms of numbers of specific positions, for example? Yeah, it will to a degree, but I hope it doesn't too much, Domer. And the reason I say that is, number one, you never know what's going to be on the transfer market next year. You can hope, but I still feel the best way to develop is through high school recruiting and development. That is still the best way. Transfer recruiting needs to be a guy here, a guy there, and a Caleb Evans who's just too good to pass up. A Jack Cohn that helps you bridge the gap between what you lost and what's coming along because those guys aren't ready, that kind of thing. But for the most part, it needs to be a here and there situation. It cannot be the heart of what you're doing recruiting-wise. And I think if anything, Domer, I think what you do with the transfer portal is you use the transfer portal to overcome misses or injuries that you've had from a recruiting standpoint. So, if you like where you've recruited, but you've had a couple major injuries or guys haven't panned out, then you can kind of overcome that with the transfer portal. But I really hope that Notre Dame doesn't get sloppy and start recruiting guys that have been developed by other people, and then they just slide them into their schemes. I really hope it doesn't come to that. Tommy Leonard said, "Remember the Titans and We Are Marshall, two other good football movies." And of course, hey, where was the high school at from Remember the Titans, Tommy? Just saying, where was that at? I believe that was in Virginia. Jeffrey says, "I saw the program before they cut the scene with the players lying in the road. Totally awesome." Yeah, I remember that. That would not happen today. They would not care. All right. Thomas Walsh, "I liked Everybody's All-American with Dennis Quaid, Jessica Lange, and John Goodman. Good movie, though guys played, even though the guys played." Say, I don't remember that movie to be played for LSU. I don't remember that movie, to be honest with you. John Climax says, "Best high school player I went against, TJ Duckett. Dude put me in the hospital." Ow, I'm glad that you're okay. But yeah, that's pretty bad. That's pretty bad. Let's see here. D-Rock says, "Great show. At one time, we had 171 in the live chat, record super chats. We've got up to, I think, 190 once, I think. Remember to hit the like button, share, and subscribe." Yes, always, D-Rock. I appreciate it. And then I believe that's it. So if I missed a question, I apologize. We'll get into it next week, but I think we got through everything. And I just want to say, I want to thank all of you so much for being with us today. This was a really fun show. A lot of great questions, a lot of great comments. I love the community that you guys are building with us. That's been a ton of fun. And of course, all of you that support us with your time and all of you that support us with your hard-earned money, we greatly appreciate it. Our merch store link is in the bottom below. The link to our free newsletter is in the link below, so you can get all of our content. And as we're going to continue to grow this platform and this channel, you all are part of that original foundation. And I really, really appreciate it. This is going to send us into a really fun weekend. I hope everybody enjoyed it, and we will talk to all of you. Actually, we got one question in here real quick. So from Q Kelly, who I've never seen, but it's a new person, so I want to get it in. "If coaches like Spindler over Carell, best lineman play principle, would they keep Patterson at center and play Madden and Spindler guards?" Yeah, I think if they got to the situation where they thought Madden and Spindler or look, he could even be like Tosh Baker, right? I mean, that's the thing is like, I think if you look at the situation, like, let's say Tosh Baker just takes off this summer in fall camp, you say, Tosh is one of the 5 best, but so's Madden, and so is Rocco, and so is Patterson, and so is Blake Fisher, and those guys are all better than Zeke Carell. Then you could see a scenario, I think, where you'd move Jarrett Patterson back to center, and then you'd maybe move Josh Lugg to guard, and then Rocco and Madden could play the other guard spot, and then you'd have Tosh and Blake Fisher at tackle. So I think a lot of things could happen, and I think what this does is this does give Notre Dame a little bit more flexibility to move some guys around. So I do think that's a very good question and a very good point. And if he's as good as Notre Dame thinks he is and some other people thinks he is, then yeah, I think that could be something where we could see an even bigger shakeup than just sliding him into the one guard position where there's some uncertainty. I think it could create a lot of shakeups. But then there's the other breakout. What if Andrew Kristofic has a big fall camp? What if Tosh Baker has a big fall football camp? There's just a lot of things that could happen. But the good news is, I think one thing I will say about this is this gives them a little bit more of a wider margin for error on the offensive line. I think that's the one for sure positive that could come out of this in the short term. We'll see what it does to him long term, but for the short term, absolutely. K. Grant with another super chat. Appreciate that very much. We think you need to watch live more if you keep throwing in these super chats like that. We definitely think you need to be in the show live more, but can't wait to buy some gear. I hope you like it. I've got obviously this on now. This is actually one of the old hats. So this is actually a fitted hat. We don't actually sell this hat, but we have a trucker hat that's a snapback that's just like this. And as I told Vince, we're going to be ordering some more gear here this month because I got to order our polos for the season. So there we go with that. But anyway, that is the end of the show today. Again, I appreciate everybody being a part of it. Make sure you're checking out irishbreakdown.com for everything that we have going on. If you listen to podcasts, make sure that you are subscribed to our podcast. But more importantly, be back at this channel on Monday at 1 o'clock. We, on Monday, are going to talk about, is this 2021 Notre Dame football team capable of winning a championship? I believe it is. And it's not just about Notre Dame. There's a lot of things kind of working that makes me think this team is going to have a chance to compete for that. We'll dive into that on Monday. And then, of course, after the podcast part, we'll answer all of your questions. So I hope that all of you all are going to be with us on Monday at 1 o'clock Eastern to talk about whether or not Notre Dame in 2021 can compete for a national championship. So be there for that. Everybody have a great rest of your weekend. Before you leave, hit the like button. Subscribe, share this podcast with your friends and family. We had some earlier today said they're going to have an uncle and a dad. I think they said they're going to be listening. Share it with your friends and family. Any Notre Dame fans you know, bring them on. This channel is where you need to be. So everybody have a great weekend. We'll talk to you again very, very soon.